Look at this girl. She's giving us the ultimate anime puppy dog eyes, begging our main character to save her career. But to our guy, she doesn't look cute. She looks like a literal Celtic banshee trying to devour his soul. And the moment he says no, the cute anime girl mask completely disintegrates, revealing a sleep paralysis demon. Our guy doesn't even flinch. He just sighs and says her face is way more natural, because this isn't some weak corporate pushover anymore. Inside this body is a legendary top-tier druid. Only problem? He's currently trapped inside a 170-kilogram body that gets winded just by looking at a flight of stairs. But to understand how a high-level nature wizard ended up in the Ultimate Gamer mod build, we have to go back to the beginning. It all starts a long time ago, beyond the misty forests and whispering hills. There lived a group of legendary mystics called the Druids. They spent their lives protecting nature, carving runes under starlight, and basically being the ultimate tree-hugging philosophers. One of these noble souls was a master named Theophilo. After finishing his long journey of life, his soul entered the cycle of rebirth, wandering the endless cosmos in search of a new home. And finally, he found it. A soul that was fragile as glass, warped with pain, but otherwise completely perfect. So, instead of waiting around in the lobby of the afterlife, Theophilo gladly dove straight into his new host, Kang Si-yeon. But waking up was not the peaceful magical transition he expected. The air smelled like sharp, pungent chemicals, and someone was screaming Hyung in a language he'd never heard before. And then, his new body's memories hit him like a freight train. Decades of human suffering, stress, and absolute misery flooded his consciousness. He saw who he was. A corporate slave working endless overtime, eating trash food alone in a dark room until his body finally gave out and he collapsed on the street. It was a heart attack, at just 28 years old. But Sion didn't die because of some random skill issue. In his final moments, he had thrown himself in front of a runaway scooter to save a tiny 6-year-old child. He saved the kid, but his overworked heart immediately exploded. Now, Theophilo is stuck with the aftermath, and the math is not looking good. He is currently a walking medical miracle weighing 170 kilograms with a 50-inch waist. His doctor literally told him it's a miracle he's even breathing. Sion tries to walk down the hospital stairs, but his lungs are absolutely screaming. He sits down on a bench, panting like he's running for his life in a horror movie. As a druid, he knows he needs to gather nature force to keep this weak heart pumping. He spots a small plant next to him and decides to give it a shot. He focuses his mind, channeling his magic into the leaves. The plant glows, growing rapidly, and a beautiful white flower bursts into bloom. But his victory is short-lived. The moment the flower blooms, his entire day's worth of gathered nature force completely scatters. At this rate, he's going to go bankrupt on mana before he even gets discharged. Just as he's stressing, a familiar voice cuts through the air. It's his younger brother, Siwoo. And let's be real, this kid looks like a top-tier K-pop idol while our guy looks like a Discord mod. Siwoo is absolutely panicking, telling him to sit down before his heart explodes again. Sion tries to play it cool, but Siwoo is not having it. He looks at his brother with eyes full of tears, begging him to take care of himself because he has nobody else left in the world. Sion feels a warm rush of residual emotion from the original soul. He pats Siwoo's head, realizing just how much this kid loves him. But then, he drops a casual bombshell. Oh, by the way, I quit my job. Siwoo's jaw hits the floor. Sion explains that some Nepo baby team leader stole the project he spent 3 months pouring his soul into. Siwoo is ready to commit a felony on his brother's behalf, but Sion is surprisingly chill. He's already accepted it. Why stress over a corporate ladder when you can just build a cabin in the woods? He tells Siwoo his grand plan. He's selling the apartment and moving to the countryside. Siwoo thinks he's just going to garden and chill for his health. But Sion knows the truth. A druid without a forest is like a smartphone with a bloated battery. If he doesn't get to a dense forest soon, this unstable body will literally give out. Siwoo suggests he start filming for YouTube again. Apparently, Sion used to run a plant parent channel called Plant Butler, and the comments are full of desperate fans mourning his absence. Sion thinks it's a massive hassle, but then Siwoo hits him with the ultimate weapon, the watery, trembling anime puppy dog eyes. Even a legendary ancient druid's legendary stubbornness is completely useless against this. He agrees, but only as a diary format without showing his face. Just as they're wrapping up their wholesome moment, a female voice interrupts. Sion's heart instantly starts pounding like a techno beat. But it's not because of love. It's an involuntary physical reaction to seeing his former crush, Ayoung. And as her sweet smile greets them, Sion's memories send an absolute red alert. This girl is a toxic leech. Sion's chest is pounding from the residual feelings. Ayoung walks up, looking like a professional angel, but she's a wolf in sheep's clothing. She spent years dumping her work on Sion and framing him for her mistakes. And the worst part? The old Seon knew she was toxic and still put up with it because he was a massive simp. Siwoo, being the good brother, waves goodbye to let them talk. He heads out, leaving Seon alone with the final boss of toxic coworkers. Seon watches his brother leave, sighing deeply. He takes a deep breath, mentally preparing to deal with this clown. He turns his head, fixing her with an ice-cold glare that says, "State your business, creature." Young is visibly taken aback by the sudden lack of simp energy. She starts stuttering, completely flustered. Seon used to look at her like she hung the moon, so this sudden coldness is a massive system shock. She finally gets to the point. The core branding story of the project is missing, and she wants him to fix it. Seon just deadpans, "I don't remember that." He claims the anesthesia from his major surgery caused memory loss, and she needs to back off. When she keeps pushing, he drops the ultimate counterspell, "I've submitted my resignation, it's not my problem." She looks like her entire reality just glitched out. Realizing her workhorse is leaving, she tries to hit him with the puppy dog eyes and a sad pout. Seon just stares at her, completely unfazed. In his mind, her fake cute act is so hilarious, he literally sees a cackling banshee behind her. He sighs, thinking the original Seon had absolutely horrific taste in women. He tells her flat out, "I knew you were using me, and I let it slide because of my crush. But coming to a hospital to exploit a guy who just resigned, that's crossing the line." He tells her she's more than capable of doing it herself, completely shutting down her excuses. Young's perfect, pretty mask finally cracks. Her face turns into a demonic, vein-popping scowl of pure unadulterated rage. Seon thinks, "Much better. That fake smile was giving me a headache anyway." It's time to sever the karmic ties of the past. He is no longer the corporate slave Seon, he is Theophilo. He tells her to get lost and stands up to walk away. "Send anything else via text," he tosses over his shoulder with maximum disrespect. Young is left standing there, literally shaking with rage like a boiling kettle. She screams, "I hope you have a speedy recovery," which is the polite Korean way of saying, "I hope you trip down the stairs." Seon just chuckles, knowing he successfully got his point across. He pulls out his work phone and casually ignores all incoming calls. The corporate grind is officially dead. Suddenly, a cute little sparrow flies down from the sky. It lands straight on his shoulder, chirping happily. Even without mana, animals can feel his gentle druid soul. Time in the hospital starts flying by. He works out hard every single day, and his body is slowly recovering. Even the hospital staff start noticing his insane dedication. And since word got out that his brother is a famous idol, the nurses are suddenly giving him extra perks. A nurse brings him a massive bowl of fresh strawberries and berries. Seon picks up a giant, juicy strawberry, his mouth watering. He takes a big bite, and oh my god, the flavor explosion is so intense his eyes literally turn into sparkles. It tastes like sweet honey and morning dew, a literal high-tier gourmet experience. The nurse giggles, saying he looks like he's eating a strawberry for the first time in his life. He laughs, saying it's been a very long time since he's had fresh fruit. Compared to the roots and grass he chewed on as a medieval druid, this is literal heaven. It feels like he's strolling through a high-ranking druid's legendary botanical garden. But then, a sudden shockwave hits his senses. His eyes go wide, staring at the strawberry in his hand. "What's wrong, young man? Is there dirt on it?" the nurse asks. He whispers, "No, it's just delicious." But internally, his system is going crazy. A bright green aura of nature force erupts around him. He can absorb nature force directly by eating fresh natural fruits. This is an absolute cheat code. This is the ultimate sign he needs to get to the countryside immediately. Finally, his day of discharge arrives. An elderly grandmother in his room calls him a tough, stubborn kid. And for good reason, he lost an absolute mind-blowing 20 kilograms in just 3 weeks. His skin is glowing, his jawline is starting to fight its way out, and he can actually move without panting. He thanks the grandmother, holding her hands with a warm, gentle smile. As he does, he quietly channels a generous burst of his newly gathered nature force into her body. It won't cure her instantly, but she'll definitely feel 10 years younger by tomorrow. That's the druid way. She tells him he looks handsome when he smiles and asks where he's heading now. He tells her he's moving to the peaceful countryside to fully recuperate, a place far away from the noisy, polluted city where he can heal his soul. His destination? A beautiful, lush rural village called White Tiger Mountain, but when he finally arrives at the village gates dragging his massive suitcases, he collapses flat on his face, his soul practically leaving his body. "This is the place," he wheezes, looking at his new home. It's an old traditional Korean hanok house recommended by one of Saiwoo's friends. He steps through the tall grass, his feet sinking into the lush green earth. The wooden doors are worn down, covered in cobwebs, and surrounded by cluttered junk. But to Sion, it smells of rich earth, old wood, and pure, unfiltered nature. It feels alive, aging gracefully alongside the mountain. I love it, he smiles, sitting down on the wooden porch. Coming here was definitely the right move. But then he looks out at his yard. It's a literal jungle of overgrown weeds, and unfortunately, none of these modern Korean weeds are familiar to his ancient Druid memories. He smirks, realizing this modern farming life might be a bit trickier than he expected. He recites an old Celtic proverb, "Don't stub your toe on a stool that isn't in your way." No point in stressing yet. He rolls up his sleeves, ready to start cleaning. After all, a druid is the ultimate wilderness survival expert, but as he explores the yard, he suddenly spots a small stone well hidden among the grass. Instead of immediately tackling the mini jungle growing in our yard, we decide to go on a little field trip. Our guy hits up the local traditional market to grab some basic farming supplies. Because let's face it, trying to run a legendary druid garden with zero tools is a bad time. And honestly, the country market vibes are immaculate. It's loud, it's colorful, and there's a dog in a fruit crate. This is peak local living. The sheer volume of people is actually wild. Sihyun is sweating just looking at the crowd, which is highly relatable for anyone who spent the last 3 years indoors. Our guy is also learning basic modern facts. Like how a 5-day market doesn't mean it only opens on the 5th day of the month, it literally means it opens every 5 days. But before he can look for seeds, a magical scent hits his nose. And just like that, his diet-hardened resolve is put to the ultimate test. The street food stall is right there, glowing like a holy artifact. Look at that deep-fried golden perfection. The author really spent the entire budget rendering these snacks, and honestly, I respect it. Spicy rice cakes, freshly rolled gimbap, and fried dumplings. This is a targeted psychological attack on a man who has been eating raw grass and chicken breast for weeks. The residual memories of the original Sion are screaming. His brain is basically telling him that if he doesn't eat a piece of fried squid right now, his soul might leave his body again. The sweet food stall lady catches him staring with absolute hunger in his eyes. She asks him what he's looking at so intently. And in a rare moment of absolute panic, our guy turns around and runs for his life. The physical heart is weak, but the spiritual diet discipline is ironclad. We are staying in shape, no matter what. A few minutes later, he wanders into the quiet back alleys of the market. The locals are staring at him like he's a lost defensive lineman who wandered off the field. Especially this shop owner who looks like he just saw a friendly Sasquatch walk into his establishment. The old man literally gasps and points out the obvious. Yes, our guy is massive. Thanks for the confidence boost, old-timer. He tells Sihyun he looks exactly like his white dog Baiku because of his droopy eyes. Which is a wild way to greet a customer, but we'll roll with it. Sihyun ignores the dog comparison and gets straight to business. He points to the boxes of seedlings and drops the classic main character line, "I'll take everything from here to there." This is how you shop when you have a K-pop idol brother funding your life. He wants every single tomato plant, salad green, and a packet of every seed in stock. The shop owner is looking at him like he's completely lost his mind. Sion then casually asks if he has any grapevines. The owner reaches down to drag out a massive 5-year-old potted vine, quoting 60,000 won. But then the old man stops. He looks at our guy, and you can see his moral compass actively fighting his desire to make money. He sighs and points out that it is way too late in the summer to be planting seeds. They're just going to burn up and die in the heat. The old man's conscience simply won't let him sell a giant bag of doomed plants to a clueless city kid. Honestly, 10 out of 10 customer service. Sion looks at him, and his heart is warmed. It's nice to know honest people still exist in this world. But he smiles and tells him it'll be perfectly fine. Why? Because he's a certified druid, baby. Not that he can actually say that out loud to a normal human. The owner just sighs, chalks it up to city slicker stubbornness, and tells him not to come back crying when everything turns into dry twigs. The transaction is finalized, and the bags are handed over. And this is where we see the physical benefit of being a 150-kilogram tank. Sion stacks 4 heavy wooden seedling crates like they're cheap pizza boxes and lifts them effortlessly. He bids the stunned shopkeeper a cheerful goodbye and walks out. He even stops by a fruit stand to buy some more fresh mana batteries, because you can never have too many strawberries. But the shop owner runs out of the alley, screaming at him to stop. He asks him if he's seriously planning to carry a literal greenhouse back to the mountain on foot. It's a solid question. Our guy has a bicycle, not a flatbed truck. Cut to a few minutes later, and the mini truck is rumbling down the dirt road toward White Tiger Mountain. The shop owner actually drove him all the way back because he couldn't bear to watch a giant teenager try to balance 40 pounds of soil on a rusty bike frame. Sion stands in his yard, feeling slightly embarrassed. For a legendary sage who used to converse with ancient spirits, he is incredibly bad at logistics. But there's no time to complain. The sun is high, and the weeds aren't going to pull themselves. He sets his supplies aside and prepares to start his daily manual labor. It's time to clear the land. Suddenly, a cold voice behind him splits the quiet air. "Excuse me." Sion spins around, and his life flashes before his eyes. Standing at his gate is a grim-looking elder holding a literal shotgun. Welcome to the country, indeed. The shadow over the old man's face is pure horror movie material. He looks at our guy and asks, very slowly, if he's planning on living here. The shotgun is casually resting against the fence, which does absolutely nothing to lower the tension. And then, 2 seconds later, they are happily kneeling side by side, weeding the grass together. The tonal shift in this manhwa is absolute whiplash. Even while pulling weeds, the neighbor still looks like he's planning a heist. This man's default expression is just pure menace. But our guy has the ultimate defense mechanism. He's just incredibly polite and smiley. It is physically impossible to stay angry at a giant, helpful teenager. The old man grumbles and tells him he needs to fix his fence and gate before winter, otherwise he's going to freeze to death. It turns out this scary shotgun grandpa is actually his neighbor, Elder Jiang. He claims he only walked down the mountain to inspect the massive city kid who moved in. But despite his grumbling, Jiang starts dropping highly detailed country living secrets. He teaches Sion how to angle his sickle to cut grass without dulling the blade. Sion is listening with absolute focus. A true druid never turns away a teacher, even if that teacher looks like a retired hitman. Sion's cute demeanor is completely breaking the old man's defenses. Jiang realizes the giant city kid is actually just a big polite softie who listens to his elders. Jiang blushes slightly and decides he's going to have to check on this helpless giant on a regular basis. Tsundere grandfather acquired. An hour passes in absolute silence as they tear through the overgrown yard. They finally stand up, and both of their backs let out a collective groan. Country work is no joke. But then, Elder Jiang stops. He touches his chest, looking completely confused. Sion asks him if something is wrong. Jiang explains that he's been a heavy smoker for decades, and usually whenever he stands up, he hacks up a lung. But right now, his lungs feel completely clear, like he's breathing mountain air for the first time. He looks at Sion with suspicion, but the green aura around our guy is completely invisible to him. Suddenly, Jiang's eyes go wide, and he lets out a massive scream. He completely forgot that he has to feed Nuriongi, his beloved cow, and water his own crops. The author gave us a hilarious cartoon image of a crying cow to emphasize his panic. He grabs his shotgun and sprints out of the yard like a man half his age, kicking up dust. But before he disappears, he yells back a warning. He tells Sion to fix the fence because the local water deer and wild boars are absolute pests. If he catches them, he's putting holes in them. Sion just stands there, processing the warning. Telling a legendary master of nature to watch out for wild animals is easily the funniest thing he's heard all week. With the yard cleared, our guy collapses onto the wooden deck. His cat joins him, and they both enjoy the quiet afternoon sun. He pulls out his phone and starts watching nutritional guides on YouTube. The doctor on screen is explaining the golden ratio of a healthy diet: 50% vegetables, 30% protein, and 20% carbs. The video emphasizes that working out is useless if you don't combine it with a proper healthy diet. Sion absorbs the information like a dry sponge. In his past life, druids were raised by ancient sages who taught them that there is something to learn from everyone. And in the modern world, YouTube is basically his new digital sage. He only watches verified experts who put their careers on the line. Because the internet is full of fake gurus, he is genuinely amazed by modern medical science. The human understanding of anatomy and metabolism in this era is far superior to anything his medieval world ever dreamed of. The video suggests doing some light post-meal stretching to aid digestion, so our guy rolls over to start. The cat is deeply offended by the sudden movement, but before he can stretch, a blood-curdling cry echoes from the forest behind his house. "A hack! Ripple A-G-H!" His heart drops. That wasn't a human scream. That was an animal crying out in absolute desperate agony. He grabs the nearest weapon available, which is a generic wooden broom, and sprints toward the back fence. He rounds the corner looking over the broken stone wall. His eyes go wide with shock. Hanging from the wire fence is a small Korean water deer, shivering and literally crying fat tears. This is heartbreaking. Sion drops his broom, kneels in the dirt, and approaches the panicked animal with open hands, speaking in a soft, low voice to calm its racing heart. The poor thing is terrified, but the gentle aura radiating from our guy is working its magic. The deer's frantic breathing slowly starts to level out. Sion gently cups its chin. and activates his core class ability, Wild Resonance. A brilliant emerald green light erupts from his hands, filling the dark yard with pure, warm, natural magic. As he strokes the soft fur, the deer's thoughts and raw emotions begin to flow directly into his mind. His eyes glow with a powerful green light as the telepathic link stabilizes, and suddenly, a dark vision flashes before his eyes. He sees a tiny baby fawn, pinned to the forest floor, its leg caught in a brutal, rusted metal bear trap. The fawn is crying out in pain, slowly bleeding to death in the shadows of the mountain. Sion's expression hardens. The hunt is on. Without hesitating for a single second, Sion vaults over the fence and sprints into the dark woods, following the frantic mother deer. The mother deer is leaping over logs and brush, squeaking in panic, guiding him deeper into the wild territory of White Tiger Mountain. But this is where reality hits hard. Sion's 150-kilogram body is not built for mountain climbing. His lungs are burning, and his weak physical heart is pounding against his ribs like a drum. He grits his teeth, pushing through the intense physical pain. He can't stop now. If he slows down, that baby fawn is going to die of blood loss or get eaten by predators. He bursts through a thick wall of thorns, ignore the scratches on his arms. And there it is. The tiny fawn is shivering on the damp earth, its hind leg clamped shut inside a heavy steel trap. The mother deer rushes to its side, crying tears of helplessness. Sion drops to his knees beside them. There you are. Hang on, little guy. He inspects the wound, and his stomach turns. The rusted steel teeth have bitten deep into the leg, going straight down to the bone. He has no medical kit, and normal magic won't be enough to repair this level of structural damage. He closes his eyes, focusing his senses to search the surrounding forest floor. And then, his vision shifts. He notices a faint, glowing violet mist rising from the soil. The entire clearing is glowing with a rich, vibrant purple energy. This mountain isn't just clean, it is teeming with an absurdly high density of natural mana. Sion realizes that if the ambient mana is this strong, there must be rare, highly potent magical herbs growing nearby. He crawls into the bushes and gasps. Right there, growing at the base of an old oak, is a rare wild plant radiating a thick purple medicinal aura. He carefully harvests the leaves and rushes back to the injured fawn. He crushes the glowing purple leaves in his palms to release the concentrated juices and applies them directly to the torn flesh, letting the natural medicine take hold. Then, he channels his own nature force into the wound. A beautiful swirling vortex of emerald and violet light wraps around the fawn's leg, knitting the shattered bone and torn muscle back together in seconds. The fawn blinks, its tears drying up as the pain completely vanishes. It looks at its leg in absolute confusion. Sion lets out a long sigh of relief. He inspects the rusted trap, resolving to buy a pair of heavy wire cutters the next time he goes to the market. Poachers are going to be a serious problem. He wipes the sweat from his forehead and looks up at the sky. The sun has completely set, leaving him stranded in the middle of a dark, magical forest. The two deer stand up and look at him with eyes full of deep, soulful gratitude. Sion chuckles and asks them where exactly their home is, because he's officially lost in the woods. Cut to the next morning. The sun rises over the traditional tiled roof of his hanok, and the mountain birds are chirping peacefully. But inside the courtyard, our guy is making a face of pure, unadulterated agony. He is currently holding a deep squat, his body shaking like a leaf, while his phone screen counts down the final 30 seconds of his morning routine. Fitness apps are a modern instrument of torture. Meanwhile, his cat is sleeping nearby, completely ignoring his suffering. Typical cat behavior. Sion collapses onto the hard dirt yard, his thighs feeling like they're literally on fire. He thinks back to last night. He successfully carried the little fawn back to its nest and left a pile of wild, mana-rich berries to speed up its recovery. He sits up and stares at the towering peaks of White Tiger Mountain. In his past life, a mountain with this level of untouched high-density nature force would have been a highly contested holy territory fought over by ancient factions. And right now, he has the entire mountain to himself. He gets a slightly greedy, smug grin on his face. It's like finding a cheat code in an open-world game. He looks at the camera tripod he set up nearby and announces the end of the morning stretching routine, wrapping up his first official video for his Plant Butler channel. With the video recorded, it's time to get some actual farming done. And check out the fit. He is dressed in the ultimate Korean agricultural battle armor, the wide-brimmed straw hat, the protective arm sleeves, and a small trowel in hand. He looks like a local legend already. He pulls out the bags of seeds he bought at the market, We've got tomatoes, grapes, carrots, and lettuce, the classic starter pack for a cozy farming simulator. Our guy lets out a smug little chuckle. It's time to show off his elite professional skills. He has been a druid for centuries after all. This is basic level 1 stuff. He recalls his past life training. In his original world, becoming a druid was a grueling, decades-long path of asceticism, study, and dangerous rituals to be chosen by nature. The people of this modern world might think druids are just mythical garden fairies, but in reality, they are highly trained, elite ecological professionals. He drops his trowel into the loose soil and thinks to himself, planting simple seedlings like this is an absolute piece of OR not. A literal bolt of lightning strikes his spine as his lower back completely locks up. The physical strain of squatting for hours with a 150-kilogram frame is a death sentence. He is hunched over, sweating profusely under the blazing sun, realization hitting him like a truck. His mind is a legendary master, but his physical body is still a severely out-of-shape corporate worker. Every single muscle in his body is screaming, especially after running up a literal mountain last night to save a deer. He is cooked, but as he looks down at the soil, his eyes narrow with fierce determination. He grips the handle of his trowel with an iron fist. He is a druid. His professional pride simply won't allow him to quit just because of some physical back pain. It is his sacred responsibility to make sure these little seeds sprout. His cat lets out a supportive meow, and Si-hyun smiles, pushing through the physical agony to get back to work. He carefully places the tiny seeds into neat, perfectly spaced furrows, burying them gently under the warm soil. He focuses entirely on the rhythm of the work, blocking out the pain. In his mind, finding a place for a seed in the earth is a sacred act of creation. He savors the simple, quiet joy of sowing. He finally collapses back onto the wooden deck, covered in dirt and sweat, letting out a victorious shout, "All done!" He looks over his newly planted garden beds, complete with wooden support stakes. It looks incredibly neat and professional. Perfect. Now, it's time for the real magic. Si-hyun stands over the garden beds, raises his hands, and releases his nature force. A massive wave of brilliant emerald green light sweeps across the soil. And in a spectacular display of magical growth, beautiful, vibrant green tomato seedlings burst out of the earth, leaf by leaf, growing several inches in a single second. Row after row of fresh, healthy green sprouts emerge from the dirt, glowing with residual magical energy. This is the power of a professional. He smiles warmly at his new little green children. They're already sprouting so fast, looking incredibly fresh. And then, he notices something else. His physical exhaustion is rapidly fading, and his back pain is completely gone. The ambient nature force radiating from White Tiger Mountain is actively healing his body while he works. He tells his cat they did a great job today. Humming a happy tune, he grabs his watering can to finish up his chores, but as he turns around, he freezes. Standing right at his open front gate is a dark, motionless silhouette. The figure stands in the shadows of the wooden gate doors, looking incredibly imposing. Si-hyun blinks and realizes it's just his neighbor, Elder Jeong. He smiles and asks him why he's just standing out there instead of coming in. Jeong lets out a dry cough and explains that he can't just barge into someone's property uninvited, especially since he brought someone important to introduce. Si-hyun invites them in, and Jeong steps through the gate, followed by a neatly dressed older woman. Jeong introduces her with absolute respect. "This is our village head!" Si-hyun's face goes completely pale with panic. "The village head?" She smiles a sweet, polite smile. But behind her closed-eye grin, a massive, terrifying wall of dark purple spiritual pressure rises into the sky, completely blotting out the light. She looks at him and asks, "So you must be the young man from Seoul?" Oh boy. Our guy is in serious trouble, and he doesn't even know why yet. She is standing there, smiling at him, but she is radiating the exact kind of pure dark spiritual pressure you get when you walk into a room and realize you accidentally left your mic unmuted. Si-hyun is sweating bullets, internally screaming about why this elegant older lady is staring at him like she's about to read his search history out loud. And then, right on cue, a tiny white bird lands directly on top of his head. Excellent timing. The village head immediately drops her terrifying pressure and smiles, asking if this bird is his pet. It turns out she was just curious about the city boy. She explains, very warmly, that she was just worried about him living all alone in such an old, rundown house. Sion lets out the longest sigh of relief in recorded history. He genuinely thought he was about to get evicted by a local raid boss. He bows politely and explains that while the place needs some serious repairs, he is settling in just fine. But then, Elder Jiang looks over his shoulder. He spots the garden beds in the back corner of the yard, and those garden beds are absolutely glowing with fresh green sprouts. Jiang walks over, his jaw dropping. He asks how on earth the seeds Sihyun planted literally yesterday have already grown into full leafy greens. Sihyun panics and quickly claims that he didn't plant seeds, he planted fully grown seedlings. It's a classic panic move. Technically, it's a half-truth. The tomatoes and carrots were seedlings, but the magical insta-growth was all him. The village head is thoroughly impressed, admitting she thought a city boy from Seoul would only know how to grow grocery store lettuce. Siyon scratches his head and laughs, explaining that he has to eat a massive amount of vegetables for his diet. She smiles and tells him that a young man needs some bulk to look reliable, but even now, he has the kind of face that would have girls chasing him. Jiang grumbles, but then asks if there is anything else he needs to get his little farm going. He claims a city kid wouldn't know the first thing about real country life, so he should just ask for help instead of struggling alone. Sion's eyes light up. He smiles his most innocent, giant baby smile and asks if they could do him one tiny favor. Cut to several hours later. A local construction worker in a hard hat rolls up, carrying a ladder and wearing a massive, confident grin. Sion is looking at him like he just witnessed a miracle, while Zhang stands in the background looking like he's wondering how he got roped into this. And there it is. A giant, professionally built vinyl greenhouse now stands in his yard. The builder laughs and says he dropped everything to build this in record time because the village head herself requested it. Jiang crosses his arms and asks if this giant plastic tent was really the grand favor he wanted. Sion happily explains that he wants to grow delicate ornamental plants that absolutely cannot get wet in the heavy rain. The village head is fascinated. She mentions she has a dying orchid at home and asks if he can take a look at it. Sion agrees instantly. Zhang tips his cap and says they should get going because it's about time to feed his dog. They wave goodbye, telling him to grow his plants well so he can fill his pockets with sweet local cash. Sion bows deeply, thanking them as they leave. Our guy now has his own private vinyl greenhouse. This is a massive victory for his secret cultivation plans. He immediately grabs his phone on a selfie stick and starts recording a video expressing how his dream of owning a greenhouse has finally come true. He shows the camera his sensitive ornamental flowers, explaining how they need precise control over temperature and sunlight to thrive. He then hits the pause button on the recording and kneels down onto the bare dirt floor of the greenhouse. Time for some actual druid work. He channels his mana, shouting "Circulation!" as green magical lightning surges through his arms. And the dry, dead dirt of the greenhouse floor starts wriggling and shifting. Here is how this magic actually works. By channeling nature force into the ground, Sion can instantly activate the earthworms and soil microbes, forcing them to aerate and enrich the dirt. He picks up a handful of dark, moist soil, smiling. It's been centuries since he felt Earth this alive. He thinks back to his past life. As a medieval druid, he lived in the deep, ancient oak forest surrounded by vast wild plains. Back then, he was used to growing massive orchard fruit trees like apples, grapes, olives, and pears. But this mountain is completely different. It is a goldmine for rare mushrooms and medicinal mountain herbs, and his heart is racing at the culinary possibilities. He decides he needs to buy books and start studying modern Korean botany since Google search has its limits. Suddenly, his phone let out a loud chime from the wooden log nearby. It's a YouTube comment notification. He opens the app, and his jaw drops. The comments are flooded with support. The druid's back is shrinking. At this rate, he's going to turn into a little fairy, came to heal but got diet motivation instead. One commenter says they subscribe by chance and love his cozy content. Sihyun's chest swells. He never expected this level of warmth. He smiles quietly, realizing that even in this modern, fast-paced era, people are still weak to a genuine, honest story. He recalls his past life, sitting around campfires with his fellow druids, sharing stories under the starlight to help people find peace. The medium changes, but the human heart stays exactly the same. He looks down at his orange cat, feeling incredibly peaceful. He looks up at his beautiful Hanakan greenhouse, thinking that moving to this mountain was the best decision he's ever made. Cut to the next morning. Sion steps onto his glass scale inside the house, and his eyes fly open. He lets out a massive scream of pure shock. He went from 150 kilograms to 129 kilograms. That is an absolute W, a clean 21 kilogram loss in record time. The cat looks at him like, "Cool story, bro. Where's my breakfast?" Sion walks out of his gate holding his camera. He plans to water the garden and then head over to Elder Jiang's house to pick up a gift. And while he walks, he decides to host a casual Q&A session with his subscribers to celebrate his progress. He reads the first question. Druid Nim, how tall are you? Your build is like a wrestler. He laughs and explains he is 183 centimeters tall, which is basically 6 feet of solid muscle under his comfortable green sweatshirt. The next comment asks why his perilla leaves have holes in them and if he doesn't use chemical insecticides. Sion explains that since he plans on eating everything he grows, he refuses to spray toxic chemicals on his food. Instead, he's going to use a natural organic cheat code, planting aromatic mint to naturally chase the bugs away. He wraps up the Q&A, thanking everyone for their support and telling them to keep the questions coming. But before he can finish his sentence, a loud, terrifying roar splits the morning air. Oh! Sion freezes. That is a very familiar cry. He turns around and spots a dust cloud kicking up down the road. It is the little water deer fawn, its eyes bulging in pure terror as it runs for its life. And right behind it is a pair of legs sprinting at high speed. Sihyeon's jaw drops. It's Elder Jiang. He is sprinting with his shotgun, engulfed in a raging blue spiritual aura, screaming curse words at the top of his lungs. Jiang is closing the distance fast, his finger on the trigger. He screams at the deer to stop right there, and Sion realizes that if he doesn't act in the next 3 seconds, his new forest friend is going to become dinner. The thunderous roar of a shotgun blast splits the peaceful mountain air. Jiang keeps charging through the grass, yelling at the little punk of a deer to stop running. Sion is sprinting behind them, screaming for the old man to put the gun down. But Jiang is in full raid boss mode. He is running so hard he can't hear a single thing over his own heartbeat. Our guy realizes he has no choice. He has to use magic in broad daylight. He focuses his nature force on the grass beneath Jiang's feet, casting binge. A thick green vine surges out of the earth, wrapping around Jiang's ankle. Jiang trips and stumbles. Sion quickly catches up, pretending he's just running to help him. Jiang stands up, grumbling and wondering where on earth a random vine came from in the middle of a cleared road. He shakes it off, raises his shotgun again, and aims straight at the trembling deer. Sion panics. He needs a lie, and he needs it right now. "I'm raising him!" he screams, stepping between the barrel and the deer. Jiang lowers his gun, looking at him like he's speaking a foreign language. "Raising a deer?" Sion nervously claims that he rescued the little guy from a steel trap and now they're basically best friends. He kneels down, channeling a tiny bit of sweet druid mana, calling the fawn to him. The fawn instantly recognizes the magic, squeaks happily, and leaps directly into Sion's arms. Jiang is completely speechless. Sion smiles, petting the deer. Jiang crosses his arms and says a good kid doesn't turn his entire sweet potato field upside down. He tells Sion to put a collar on him because if this little monster wrecks his crops again, he's sending him the bill. Then Jiang casually notes that his shotgun was actually loaded with blanks because he doesn't shoot the young ones anyway. Classic tsundere grandfather. But he warns him that real hunting season is coming soon and actual marksmen won't be using blanks. He needs to build a pen or a shed to keep him safe. He then mentions that the village head made some traditional acorn jelly for him to pick up. Jiang explains, with a rare smile, that if he mixes the jelly with fresh lettuce and a drizzle of perilla oil, it is peak local cuisine. Jiang walks away, waving his hand, and Sion promises to get the deer home safe. Sion lets out a massive sigh of relief. That was way too close. He looks down at the fawn and scolds him, warning him that if he touches the sweet potatoes again, they are both cooked. But then, our guy gets a highly creative idea. He pulls a bright pink bandana out of his pocket and ties it neatly around the fawn's neck. The fawn looks absolutely adorable. Sihyeon explains that with this bandana, the locals will know he belongs to someone and won't shoot him. He pats him on the back, sending him back into the forest to find his mother. Cut to Elder Jiang's house. The old man is sitting on his wooden porch, taking a bite of the acorn jelly. He is still mumbling about how unbelievable it is for a city kid to raise a wild water deer. But he thinks about how happy the kid looked holding the animal, and a quiet, warm smile creeps onto his face. He sighs, muttering that the boy is downright strange, while a little bird chirps in the tree above. Meanwhile, back at the Hanok, Sion walks into his yard, completely out of breath. Running up and down the mountain is still a massive workout. Suddenly, a voice echoes from the front gate. Hyung! He looks up. Standing next to a white luxury SUV is his pink-haired K-pop idol brother, Siwoo. Siwoo waves happily, explaining he had some rare time off and decided to drop by. He introduces the handsome young man standing next to him, his road manager. Sihyun gasps, realizing this is the guy who recommended this house. The manager smiles, explaining the estate originally belonged to his late grandmother. The manager asks if the old place is livable. Sihyun smiles and says he loves how quiet it is. He invites them inside for some warm tea. But as they walk through the wooden gate, Siwoo and the manager suddenly freeze. Siwoo's green eyes go wide with absolute shock. He looks at the torn paper doors and the weathered wood. He looks at his brother and says, Hyung, no matter how you spin it, this looks like a haunted house. Sihyun is deeply offended, claiming he spent hours scrubbing the floors. Sihyun scratches his head, explaining that the real renovations are coming later. But then, the manager spots something in the corner of the yard. Siwoo points at the glowing garden beds. Oh, those must be the ones from your videos! They walk over, looking at the perfectly organized rows of healthy green sprouts. The manager is completely blown away, admitting he never expected the yard to look this beautiful. But as he speaks, a tear runs down his cheek. Sion panics, asking if he's literally crying. The manager quickly wipes his eyes, embarrassed. He explains that his grandmother loved this spot and always said it was a blessed place. Seeing someone living here and bringing it back to life is just deeply emotional. He smiles, expressing deep relief that the house is in such good hands. Sion is touched by his sincerity. Siwoo then spots the giant vinyl greenhouse in the back and asks if he can check it out. Sion laughs and tells him to go ahead. And so, Siwoo spends the next hour running around the yard like a little kid, exploring every single corner. He looks at his brother, and you can see a deep, unmistakable sense of relief on his face. Seeing Sion looking so healthy and happy is all he ever wanted. Before they know it, the warm sun starts setting over the mountain peaks. Siwoo climbs into the passenger seat of the SUV, looking out the window. He admits he was incredibly worried about his brother living out here, but now he feels like he can finally breathe again. He tells Sion to get some proper AC installed, promising to bring his entire K-pop group to visit next time. Sion smiles warmly. Got it. He calls his brother's name, telling them to drive safely and to drop by any time. But right before the car pulls away, Siwoo leans out with a mysterious grin. Oh, right. Your present should be arriving soon, so make sure you check it. And with that, the SUV drives off into the dusty sunset. Sion stands in the quiet yard, completely puzzled. A present? From a rich K-pop star? This could be literally anything. The sunset deepens, leaving him with this massive riddle as the sound of the engine fades into the distance, and right next to him, the little fawn, Bangwol, happily chirps, wearing his pink bandana. Meanwhile, in the glitzy heart of Gangnam Seoul, we find ourselves at the towering headquarters of RV Entertainment. Inside the dressing room, Hisu, the main vocalist of Tracker, is currently clutching his chest and screaming at his phone screen like he just watched his gacha pull turn into a 3-star weapon. Jerome, the main dancer, is looking at him with supreme concern, asking why he's suddenly letting out blood-curdling screeches in the middle of their break. Leo, the group leader, leans over his chair, completely baffled by whatever is happening on that tiny screen. Then Siwoo walks in, holding his own phone with a massive, mischievous grin on his face. He happily shows them the culprit, a giant, juicy green caterpillar crawling across a leaf on his brother's countryside channel. Hisu and Leo are absolutely losing their minds in the background, screaming about how disgusting it is, while Siwoo proudly boasts that this is his brother's masterclass content. Leo sits back, realizing this is that famous Healing in the Countryside channel everyone has been whispering about lately. And then Kay, the quiet sub-vocalist, casually holds up his own phone, revealing he's already subscribed. He blushes slightly, admitting the videos are so incredibly peaceful and comforting that they're the only thing helping him sleep after grueling dance practices. Jerome points out that Siwoo's older brother is surprisingly talented with his hands. He raves about the gorgeous plating of his fresh homegrown vegetables, claiming the food looks so vibrant it practically looks photoshopped. Siwoo is smugly scratching his cheek, boasting that at this rate, his brother is going to bypass 1 million subscribers and easily hit 2 million. The boys are fully on board, instantly planning a group road trip to visit the legendary Hanok the second their idol schedule clears up. But then, Hisu's face suddenly goes completely blank as he scrolls further down the video feed. He grabs Siwoo's arm, telling him he needs to look at this specific clip right now. He turns the screen around, asking if his brother is casually raising a wild water deer as a household pet. Siwoo stares at the screen, his brain completely short-circuiting as he recognizes the animal. And there is our boy Bangwoo, proudly sporting his hot pink bandana and little brass bell, looking like the absolute king of the yard. Cut back to White Tiger Mountain, where Bangwoo is currently giving Seon the sassiest, most judgmental side-eye ever rendered in a webtoon. Seon is running behind him, panting heavily, begging the little monster to wait up. He grumbles that names like Bleach or Dana would have been way cooler, but the stubborn deer refuses to answer to anything but Bangwoo. Here is the core druidic science behind this. Once a wild animal tastes a druid's nature force even once, their spiritual wave becomes permanently attuned to that master, and when the druid bestows a formal name, it acts like an invisible, unbreakable thread tying their souls together. It is a sacred contract of the wild. But this ancient truth isn't just limited to things that run on four legs. Seon stops his walk and looks down at his white sneakers, whispering that he finally found what he was looking for. Standing right in front of him is a towering ancient pine tree, rising majestically into the mountain sky. This same magical bonding principle applies to the silent, rooted giants of the forest. Seon steps forward, gently placing his hand against the rough bark. His eye flashes with a brilliant emerald green light. He asks the ancient giant if it would like to become his Orin. Since ancient times, druids have used the term Orin to describe plants and trees that have been formally linked to their personal mana pool. Once the link is active, the Orin drinks the breath of the stars, reads the vibrations of the earth, and becomes the literal eyes and ears of the druid across the entire forest. It is, in a way, like setting up a high-definition magical security camera to mark your territory. Since Seon bought not just the Hanok but the entire mountainside behind it, he needs a central hub to monitor his massive estate. He chose the largest pine tree in the area as his central focal point, and the ancient giant gently sways its branches in the wind, accepting the magical bond. Seon smiles, telling his new wooden sentinel he'll be counting on it, while Bangwoo squeaks happily beside him. With his territory officially secured, the birds chirp peacefully as they head back down the trail. Seon decides it's about time to head over to the village head's house to fulfill his promise and check on her dying orchid. But as he rounds a bend in the path, he suddenly stops dead in his tracks. His eyes go wide with absolute furious shock. A massive section of the forest floor has been completely dug up, leaving a gaping, messy scar in the beautiful green landscape. Seon kneels down, touching the fresh dirt. These aren't wild animal scratches. The clean, sharp edges are undeniable tool marks left by shovels. Someone is illegally trespassing on his land to steal wild roots. Our guy clenches his fists, his face dark with rage. How dare some nameless lowlifes do this to a forest owned by a literal druid? They are about to get a painful lesson in natural selection. He stands up, realizing exactly what needs to be done. Since White Tiger Mountain is currently his sanctuary, he needs to handle this through the proper channels. And according to ancient druidic law, when someone violates your forest, you immediately report it to the local sovereign of the territory. He sprints all the way down the mountain, throwing open the gates of the local sovereign, shouting, "Village Chief!" But the second he steps inside, his brain completely halts. The village head is standing in her yard, looking incredibly wealthy, waving at him with a warm smile. Seon's jaw drops as he takes in the view. Her house is a massive, ultra-luxurious traditional estate, and she is casually wheeling a high-end electric bicycle that literally costs 5 million won. She chuckles, telling him he has perfect timing because she was just about to ride over to his place. She pulls out a withered, sad-looking orchid in a plastic pot from her bicycle basket. She explains with a heavy sigh that she's been watering it exactly as instructed, but it just keeps getting weaker. It was her late husband's absolute favorite plant, so she is desperate to save it. Sehyun gently takes the pot, smiling warmly, and tells her not to worry. He'll nurse the little guy back to health in no time. But then his face goes serious, and he tells her there's a major problem on the mountain. He unloads the whole story, explaining that someone has been illegally trespassing and digging up the forest floor behind his hanok. They sit down in her gorgeous courtyard, and she sips her tea, listening intently to his report. She sighs and confirms that every bit of that is highly illegal, violating both private property and wildlife protection laws. She promises to report it to the local forest patrol, but warns him that unless the thieves are caught red-handed in the act, the police won't do a single thing. She recalls a frustrating story from last spring where she caught root thieves red-handed loading their truck, but the police let them go because they couldn't prove who originally owned the wild shoots. And because there are no CCTV cameras in the deep woods, the thieves know exactly how to exploit this legal loophole to dig in secret. But then, the village head gets a sharp, brilliant look in her eyes, declaring that this is the absolute perfect excuse to call a full-scale state of emergency. She reaches into her bag, pulling out an official-looking document. She proudly holds up the printed agenda for the upcoming Dongwon 1 Rai Village community meeting, looking like a general preparing a battle plan. She tells him to come to the community hall tonight, adding with a warm laugh that they're throwing a special welcome party for him as the newest resident. Si-yeon looks at the agenda, totally bewildered. A village community meeting? It sounds incredibly official for a quiet mountain town, as a fish splashes in her pond. That evening, the lights of the Dongwon 1 Ri Community Hall are blazing under the night sky, and inside, the party is absolutely wild. Elder Jeong is on stage, completely red-faced, screaming karaoke into a microphone while literally balancing a metal bowl on his head. This is peak uncle culture. Si-yeon sits at a long table, completely stunned by the sheer chaos of the room as the local elders dance and celebrate around him. The village grandmas instantly crowd around our guy, praising his handsome face and piling a mountain of food onto his plate. Elder Jeong is casually drinking traditional makgeolli from his bowl, while the grandmas tell Si-yeon to eat up and promise to send him home with bags of leftovers. They are aggressively stuffing giant wraps of grilled pork directly into his mouth, and our guy is physically struggling to survive the intense country hospitality. He looks around, sweating profusely, wondering if this chaotic feast is what they actually call a community meeting. Welcome to the countryside, kid. The disco ball is spinning, and the atmosphere in the hall is loud and festive. But then, the village head steps up to the stage and taps the microphone, instantly command the room's attention. She officially declares the start of the 12th Dongwon District 1 village meeting, and the playful atmosphere instantly turns serious. Si-yeon sits at the table, clapping politely along with the other elders. A local elder leans over, asking if he heard about the trouble going on in the village lately. He explains that a group of shady, petty thieves have been sneaking around at night, stealing Sunni's sweet potatoes and digging up valuable wild bracken and deodoc roots from the mountain. The room instantly erupts into angry murmurs. The elders are furious, shouting that they need to catch these cowards and teach them a painful lesson. Elder Jeong sits quietly, stroke his chin as he listens to the complaints. And then, our guy raises his hand and makes a highly practical suggestion. Why don't we run regular rotating night patrols around the village? The village head's eyes light up. She loves the idea, and the rest of the elders nod in agreement, praising Jeong for finally having a good neighbor with a brain. She officially puts the patrol rotation on the agenda, and the meeting is successfully resolved under the starlit sky. And the second the business is done, the party instantly resumes at maximum volume, with Jeong running back to the karaoke machine to finish his song. Si-yeon smiles, amazed by how fast these country folks move, when suddenly a heavy hand drops onto his shoulder. A cheerful, middle-aged man in a green windbreaker sits down beside him. He introduces himself as Lee Dongbok, the Secretary General of the County Sports Association and the official sponsor of tonight's feast. Dongbok points to the massive red bean rice cake tower on the table, asking if Si-yeon was the polite young man who brought it. Si-yeon blushes, admitting it's his first time formally greeting the village, so he wanted to bring a proper gift. Dongbok is thoroughly impressed by his manners. But then, Dongbok inspects Si-yeon's massive broad shoulders and asks if he does any physical training, claiming that with a sturdy frame like that, he would be an absolute legend in traditional Syrian wrestling. Si-yeon sweats nervously, but before he can answer, the village head steps in and shuts Dongbok down, reminding him that the boy just survived major heart surgery and needs rest, not wrestling. Si-yeon lets out an awkward laugh, deeply grateful for her intervention, while Dongbok whines about losing prime athlete material. Suddenly, a small wet nose sniffs at Si-yeon's leg. Si-yeon looks down and gasps as a little dog starts happily licking his hand. Dongbok yells in absolute panic, warning him to watch out because that's his dog, Baduk, and he is notorious for biting anyone who gets close. But as the entire room watches in stunned silence, the feisty, mean little Baduk curls up directly into Si-yeon's lap, letting out a happy sigh and falling fast asleep. The village head bursts out laughing, teasing Dongbok that animals always recognize a good, pure-hearted person first. Dongbok looks completely betrayed by his own pet, He reaches out to grab his dog, but Baduk instantly snaps his jaws and lets out a terrifying growl at his own owner, before instantly snuggling back down onto Seon's lap. The power of Druid mana is truly a cheat code. And so, wrapped up in the warm, chaotic hospitality of the village, Seon's very first community meeting comes to a successful end. Cut to a few days later. The summer sun is shining brightly over his lush, thriving vegetable garden. Seon stands outside, holding his phone on a selfie stick, recording a new video for his growing subscriber base. He happily announces some massive news. His regular medical checkup results are officially in, and he has officially dropped below the morbidly obese range, losing another 5 kilograms. He adds with a massive grin that the doctor was so impressed by his progress that he officially gave him permission for one glorious cheat day a week. So today, he is preparing a legendary outdoor feast on his wooden hanok porch. The camera pans down to thick, juicy slices of samgyeopsal pork belly sizzling and crackling on a hot grill. This is absolute food porn. The rich, savory aroma fills the quiet yard, and our guy is literally drooling as he waits for the meat to turn golden brown. He proudly shows the camera his side dishes, fresh garlic, perilla leaves, lettuce, and tomatoes, all harvested directly from his own magical garden. He sits down on the porch, his cat watching him with intense focus. Seon clasps his hands together, thanking the earth for the feast, and prepares to take his first bite. He shakes the fresh water off a crisp lettuce leaf, laying a fragrant perilla leaf smoothly on top. He adds 2 perfectly grilled, crispy slices of pork belly, a sliver of toasted garlic, and a dollop of savory samjang sauce. He rolls it into a perfect little green package and pops the entire thing into his mouth. And his eyes instantly fly open as a literal explosion of flavor hits his brain. The nutty aroma of the perilla leaf wraps around his tongue like a warm forest spirit, followed by a rush of rich, savory pork juices that taste like a pure mountain spring. The absolute harmony of homegrown vegetables nurtured by the earth and the rich meat of nature flows together in his mouth. He is experiencing culinary enlightenment. He looks at the camera, completely breathless, and announces that this spectacular meal is finally worthy of bringing out that one. His cat tilts its head, looking highly intrigued. Seon reaches down and proudly holds up a giant bowl of rich, glowing red kimchi. He explains that this is premium, aged kimchi, taken directly from the traditional underground clay crocks at the village head's estate, gifted to him after the meeting. He wraps a sizzling piece of pork belly inside a thick, juicy slice of the aged kimchi. The burst of tangy, fermented spice perfectly cuts through the rich fat of the pork belly, creating the ultimate culinary synergy. He is officially feasting like a king. And so, surrounded by the quiet forest and the delicious sizzle of meat, Seon loses himself in the meal, eating happily for quite some time. He finally reaches over and hits the stop button on his camera, and immediately collapses flat on his back on the wooden deck, rubbing his stuffed stomach. He lets out a massive burp, laughing at himself. He totally lost his composure and just stuffed his face in silence. He decides he needs to act a bit more dignified in his next video. Suddenly, a loud, energetic vibration splits the quiet afternoon. His phone is buzzing like crazy, startling the poor cat into a high-speed sprint. Seon sits up, looking at the screen. It's an incoming call from the village head. He slides the screen and answers politely. She greets him warmly, explaining she's calling to check on her withered orchid, worried that she dumped too much heavy work on a recovering patient. Seon smiles and tells her there's absolutely nothing to worry about. He already nursed the little guy back to perfect, vibrant health and was planning on bringing it over tomorrow. The village head is overjoyed, declaring that since he took such amazing care of her precious plant, she absolutely has to pay him for his services. Seon panics, waving his hand, and politely declines, saying he didn't do it for money. But she shut him down instantly, telling him a young man should never turn down pocket money from a grateful elder. She tells him she's going to transfer the funds straight to his bank account, warning him not to argue, and Seon reluctantly agrees. She bids him a cheerful goodbye and hangs up, leaving him standing by his quiet greenhouse. Seon scratches his head, thinking it feels a bit awkward to take money for a simple plant heal, but decides to accept her kindness gratefully. Suddenly, his phone lets out a sharp ting-dong notification chime. He looks down at the screen, expecting a small, polite thank you transfer of 20 or 30,000 won. But the second he reads the number, his face goes completely pale. His hand shakes so violently that his phone literally slips from his fingers. He falls backward onto his rear on the wooden stairs, his eyes bulging in pure, unadulterated terror. His heart is pounding against his chest. On the screen is an official bank notification showing a successful deposit of 5 million won. That is nearly $4,000 USD for watering a single orchid. Back in our guy's original Druid days, his ancient master once sat him down and dropped some legendary wisdom. He explained that whether you are using your magic to nurse a delicate flower back to health or using massive vines to crush an enemy's ankles, a professional druid should always be properly compensated. The world runs on a strict balance of give and take, and if you let people overpay you, the universe will just toss more chaotic work your way. And looking at his phone screen, Sihyun realizes he is currently the most overpaid man in Gyeonggi-do. 5 million won is not pocket change, it is a literal down payment on a used car. He sits on his porch, scratching his head in absolute disbelief. How on earth is he supposed to justify taking this much money for watering a single houseplant? He tried calling the village head back to return the funds, but she immediately unloads on him, screaming that he is insulting her sincerity by trying to play the humble city boy. You do not argue with a traditional Korean grandmother. Sion sighs, realizing he has no choice but to accept the money, but his professional pride as a druid won't let him leave the ledger unbalanced. He decides he's going to make her a spectacular gift of his own to even the score. And looking at his garden, he realizes his magical grapevines are almost ready for harvest. If he uses his best mana-infused grapes to craft a legendary bottle of druid wine, she will definitely love it. He smiles, getting straight to work. Our guy pulls out his laptop, praising the absolute convenience of the modern internet. No need to chop down trees and wait months, you can get whatever you need with a few taps. He orders a premium 220-liter French oak barrel to age the wine. It runs him close to 1 million won, which is a massive chunk of his new cash, but quality requires sacrifice. He laughs, thinking back to his past life when oak trees were so common he was practically tripping over them in the forest. He actually misses those simple wood-rich days. He looks out his window, watching his quiet, sunlit yard. His grapes are hanging in heavy, glowing purple bunches, soaking up the pure mountain sunlight and starlight. They are practically bursting with nature force. Suddenly, a loud knock echoes from his front gate. Sion looks up from his laptop, completely startled. He opens the door and finds a flatbed truck parked outside, with a sturdy builder in a yellow hard hat standing in his driveway. Sion asks if he can help him. The builder bows politely and asks if he is Mr. Kang Sihyun. Sihyun confirms his identity and the builder hands him a clean business card. His name is Yo Seonju, a professional traditional carpenter, and he reveals he was sent directly by Sihyun's younger brother, Siwoo. A few minutes later, Carpenter Yu is standing inside the kitchen, hammering on the walls to inspect the structure. Sihyun is on the phone with Siwoo, his voice shaking as he asks if the construction crew is really already here. Siwoo happily confirms, explaining that Carpenter Yu is a legendary artisan who did the official restoration work on the famous Jeonju Hanok village. Sihyun is in the best hands possible. Sihyun is incredibly touched, realizing this was the mysterious present his brother was teasing yesterday. But he insists he would have been perfectly fine living in the old house as it was. Siwoo lets out a dramatic puff of air, telling him that he saw the cobwebs and bugs, and there is absolutely no way he's letting his only brother live in a haunted house. He tells Sihyun to let the crew do their job and promises to cover every single one of the bill, so he shouldn't stress about the budget. He adds with a laugh that the carpenter's nephew is actually a massive fan of Tracker, so they can just pay him back later with a couple of signed albums. Sihyun smiles, thanking his brother warmly before hanging up. He turns to Carpenter Yu, asking how the structural integrity of the house is looking. Yu's face goes completely pale. He points at the ceiling, explaining that the entire kitchen is basically a single loose plank slapped over some dry rafters, and the main support pillar has been completely hollowed out by a massive colony of termites. It would literally collapse in the next heavy storm. Sihyun sweats awkwardly, feeling incredibly exposed. As a druid, he was used to sleeping in dirt caves and hollow trees, so he didn't even notice the structural danger of his modern kitchen. Yu notes that the main roof tiles and the foundation rafters are actually quite sound, meaning the core frame is decent, but the termites are a massive threat. If they leave them as is, they'll chew through the entire house, causing structural collapse and severe allergic reactions. Sion knows termites wouldn't dare bite a druid, but since his brother is paying, there's no reason to be stubborn. He asks Yu how much the entire renovation will cost. Yu smiles and says it's actually much cheaper than he thinks. Since this hanok is a registered historic style, they can apply for a local government preservation subsidy that will cover about half the total cost. Sion bows deeply, thanking him, and Yo promises to handle everything with extra care since he's Siwoo's older brother. After Yu leaves, the orange cat rolls onto its back on the wooden deck, and Sion sighs in relief. He was feeling slightly guilty about costing his brother so much money, but the subsidy takes a massive load off his mind. He watches the truck rumble away down the dirt road. Sion looks back at his old hanok, his heart beating with excitement. He walks across his yard as the evening sun begins to paint the sky in shades of gold and orange. He stares at his home, imagining what the gorgeous traditional estate will look like once the renovations are complete. He stands there for a long time, lost in thought, while his cat rubs affectionately against his leg. A few days later, our guy heads down to the lively Guyang market to stock up on groceries. The traditional market is bustling with locals, smells of fresh food, and busy vendors. Si-hyun carries his shopping bag walking past the local herbal pharmacy. He stands outside looking slightly hesitant. Suddenly, a voice behind him yells, "What are you doing out here?" Sion jumps 10 feet into the air, clutching his chest in pure panic. It's Elder Jeong, looking at him with amusement, asking why he's jumping around like he just saw a ghost. Sion laughs nervously, greeting his neighbor. Jeong asks if he's out shopping. Jeong reaches into Sion's bag, pulling out some tofu and soybean water, grumbling and asking if he's joining a monastery. It's nothing but rabbit food, but Jeong admits the diet is working wonders. Sion looks significantly healthier and more defined than when he first arrived. He actually has a visible neck now. Jeong asks what he was doing standing outside the herbal pharmacy. Sion hesitates, explaining he wanted to ask about selling some wild herbs he dug up on the mountain. Jeong looks at him, highly skeptical. Herbs? Sion flashes back to a few days earlier. He was running up the mountain trail, completely out of breath, begging Bangwol to slow down. Suddenly, Bangwol started furiously digging in the dirt behind a mossy rock, and turned around proudly holding a massive glowing white root in her mouth. Sion explains the story, and Jeong bursts out laughing, asking since when wild deer dig up valuable medical roots. He thinks the kid is just pulling his leg, but seeing Sion's serious face, Jeong stops laughing. He tells him that if he really wants to sell high-quality herbs, the local market pharmacy is the wrong place. He needs a real specialist. Jeong smiles, telling him to follow him, promising to introduce him to a local expert who knows everything about the high-end market. Sion follows him, wondering who this mysterious specialist could be. Cut to a few minutes later, inside a beautifully lit, modern living room. A warm cup of coffee is placed on a marble table. The room is dim, and a menacing shadow looms over them. Sion is sweating profusely, whispering to Jeong, "The specialist was the village head?" She smiles, explaining that collecting rare herbs is her personal hobby, and she often helps the locals sell them. She sips her coffee, looking relaxed, asking what kind of herbs the young man brought. Sion nervously pulls a black plastic grocery bag out of his pocket, offering it to her. The village head looks inside, expecting to find some basic wild bellflower or generic mountain roots, but the second her eyes adjust, she completely freezes. Her round glasses reflect a blinding white light. She counts the leaves in absolute disbelief. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leaves. Wait, is this? She literally leaps out of her seat, holding the massive white root in the air, screaming, "Ginseng! We've got wild ginseng!" Jeong spits his coffee directly across the table in shock. Sion is completely bewildered by her reaction, while her hands shake with intense excitement. She screams at him, her voice echoing across the entire neighborhood, asking how on earth he could bring a legendary wild ginseng root inside a cheap black plastic trash bag. This is a culinary crime. Here is the raw science behind this. Wild ginseng, also known as sansam, is a legendary root that grows untouched in the deep mountains for decades, absorbing the pure spiritual energy of the earth. The specific Cheonjong ginseng that Sion casually brought in his pocket is over 50 years old, making it an incredibly rare national-grade treasure. Its market value easily runs from tens of millions of won to hundreds of millions. She screams, asking where on earth he found this. Sion explains that his pet water deer dug it up. The village head looks at him like he's speaking alien, while Jeong grumbles that if you live long enough, you truly see everything. Jiang asks if it's actually possible to sell a root of this caliber. She snorts, telling him that high-end collectors will buy this faster than they can pack it. She immediately takes out her phone to take high-definition photos to send to the Ginseng Diggers Association, noting that this specimen is easily worth 30 million won and could easily triple that with the right corporate buyer. She looks at Sihyun, explaining that for a legendary root like this, the origin story actually matters immensely to high-end buyers. She explains that collectors love mystical tales, like a digger dreaming of a mountain spirit who points them toward a secret golden field. She grins, saying in his case they can pitch it as a blessed omen, a lucky, magical deer leading a pure-hearted young man to the treasure. Jiang grumbles in the background, calling it a load of absolute nonsense. The village head tells him to leave the transaction to her, promising to handle the sale properly without skimming a single one off the top. Sihyun thanks her warmly. Leaving the legendary root in her capable hands, Sihyun and Elder Jiang head back toward the Hanak. The country roads are quiet as they walk past the green fields. Jiang asks him what he thought of the village head's estate, noting she runs the richest household in the entire region. Jiang explains that her late husband used to be the president of a massive shipping and automotive conglomerate back in the day, making a legendary fortune. But right when he finally retired to rest in the quiet countryside, he fell terminally ill and passed away within 3 years, leaving her to raise the kids alone. She spent years searching the mountains for rare medicinal herbs to keep him alive, which is how she became such a high-level expert, and now she does middleman work for the locals, just for fun. Jiang chuckles, saying she might have had bad luck with her husband, but she has incredible luck with money and is a major big shot in the corporate world, so Sihyun doesn't need to worry about the sale. Suddenly, a loud text chime rings from Jiang's pocket. He pulls out his phone, laughing as he says, "Speak of the devil." It's a message from the village head. Jiang reads the screen and his face goes completely blank. He tells Sihyun that a massive corporate president just bought the ginseng and the final sale price is just under 100 million won. Sihyun's jaw drops to the floor. 100 million won? That is nearly $80,000 USD for a single root. Jiang slaps a heavy, warm hand onto Sihyun's shoulder. His voice goes serious. He tells him to keep this massive amount of money completely to himself and never brag about it, warning him that sudden wealth can bring out the worst greed in people. Sihyun looks at him, completely stunned. In that quiet moment, an old forgotten memory overlaps with the present. He remembers the warm, sincere hand of his ancient Druid master who always stayed quietly by his side to guide him through the dangers of the world. A warm, genuine smile creeps onto his face. It's been a very long time since anyone in any lifetime cared about his well-being like this. He happily tells Jiang that once the money clears, he's buying him the biggest plate of boiled pork at the market. Jiang grumbles, telling him to fix his sweet potato field first. A few days later, the sound of sawing and hammering echoes through the yard. An aerial view shows a full-scale renovation team tearing apart the Hanak, replacing the old roof and reinforcing the pillars. Carpenter Yu approaches Sihyun, holding a detailed architectural blueprint. He explains the remodeling plan, showing how they've torn down the low ceiling to restore the Hanak to its original elegant height. They are also extending the main floor, connecting the old outhouse bathroom directly to the main building to create a fully modern, comfortable layout. Sihyun is amazed by the scale of the house, happily telling Yu to go ahead with the plans. Yu then asks what he wants to do about the outer security wall. Sihyun gets a cute, proud look on his face, holding up a colorful drawing he made himself. He proudly shows a sketch of an arched garden gate covered in beautiful red roses, with big apple and persimmon trees planted along the outer wall. Yu smiles, noting that rose thorns actually act as a great natural deterrent to keep intruders out. But Yu warns him that roses alone won't stop determined thieves, suggesting they install a heavy motorized gate system instead. Sihyun gets a dreamy look, explaining that roses are incredibly useful. They can be brewed into tea, have powerful antibacterial properties, and above all, they are beautiful. Standard Druid logic. Yu chuckles and agrees to the design, while the orange cat watches them with big, curious eyes. The team gets back to work, unloading heavy wooden pallets from the flatbed truck. And like winter quietly giving way to spring, the old neglected house slowly begins to regain its true majestic shape. Sihyun watches the progress, realizing this Hanak will soon become a sacred sanctuary where nature, wind, and sunlight blend together in perfect harmony. That night, The lights inside the yard are turned off. Inside his cozy vinyl greenhouse, Sion is sitting on a sleeping mat talking to Siwoo on the phone. Siwoo is shocked, asking if he's really sleeping in a plastic tent during the renovations. Sion laughs, telling him it's actually incredibly cozy and comfortable, and it makes for great YouTube vlog content anyway. Sion asks how his idol schedule is. Siwoo sighs, explaining they're practicing and recording non-stop. They are heading out for a massive European tour soon, and he is absolutely dreading the intense jet lag. Sion tells him to stay safe and not push his body too hard. Siwoo smiles, telling his brother to worry about his own health instead, promising to drop by one last time before flying to Europe. He bids his brother goodnight and hangs up the phone. Sion looks down, his smile fading into a look of quiet concern. He knows his younger brother is running himself ragged without a single break. His heart quietly aches, wishing he could do something more to support him than just cheering from afar. He lies back on his pillow, looking up through the transparent glass roof of the greenhouse. The stars are incredibly clear tonight. He closes his eyes, hoping the renovations finish quickly so his brother can have a peaceful sanctuary to rest without any worries. Under the beautiful starlit canopy, the Druid slowly drifts off to sleep. The next morning, the sun rises over the quiet forest path behind the Hanok. Sion yells, "Bangwool!" He points a finger at the deer, scolding her for chewing on his fresh sprouts and eating all the lettuce in his garden. The cat looks at them, completely unbothered. Every single morning at dawn, Sion's day begins by tending to the mountain behind his house. He kneels in the grass, surrounded by rabbits, squirrels, and forest birds, using his nature force to smooth out the scattered spiritual energy of the mountain. He looks at Bangwool, thinking it's hard to stay angry at her since she did lead him to 100 million won ginseng root after all. And since Bangwool started hanging out by his side, soaking up his druidic energy, her fur has become incredibly smooth and glossy. She is livelier than ever, and his YouTube comment section is completely obsessed with her, begging for more deer content in every video. He teases her, calling her a little freeloading superstar. But suddenly, a cold, heavy vibration ripples through his mind. He looks up at his Orin pine tree. The ancient sentinel is flashing with an ominous, bright purple warning light. Anomaly detected. Sion immediately closes his eyes, connecting his consciousness directly to the Orin's sensory network. His eyes fly open, flashing with a powerful emerald green light. Through the tree's eyes, he hears the crisp crunch of a boot stepping onto the forest floor. Two shadowy figures carrying shovels and pickaxes are sneaking through his dark woods. The root thieves have returned to his mountain. So, our root-stealing poachers are currently on White Tiger Mountain, and the leader of these absolute clowns is lecturing his partner about the delicate art of harvesting mushrooms. Because apparently, even if you are a dirty thief trespassing on private property, you still have to worry about product presentation. His partner is actually trying to show a single brain cell here, pointing out that the mountain has a brand new owner, so maybe they should be a bit careful. But of course, our lead thief has been doing this for years, so he decides that laws are more like friendly suggestions and tells him to shut up and dig. Until he hears a rustle in the bushes and turns around to find a literal gold mine of premium pine mushrooms glowing in the forest light. Now, normally these matsutake mushrooms do not grow until late autumn, so finding a massive patch in the middle of summer makes absolutely zero sense. But these guys do not care about botany or magical anomalies. They just see a massive payday sitting in the dirt. He drops to his knees, counting the cash in his head, and tells his partner to start stripping the land bare. But his partner has completely frozen up, looking like he just saw his search history projected on a billboard. Because out of the dark, a wall of glowing red eyes steps forward, completely surrounding them. The entire local wildlife union has just arrived, and they look like they are about to file a very violent complaint. The leader tells him to ignore the literal army of angry forest beasts and keep digging, which is an Olympic tier level of denial. But before he can grab another mushroom, a sudden chilling wind rips through the trees, and a thick, freezing fog rolls in out of nowhere, completely blinding them. And that is when a wild boar, looking like a budget version of a Dark Souls boss, snarls right in their faces. The animal's eyes glow a bright, radioactive green, and they are definitely not looking for treats, because standing right behind them is our guy Sion, looking completely unfazed with a literal baby chick resting on his head. He sits calmly in the clearing, explaining that he thought a good scare would make them back off, but it turns out greed is a hell of a drug. So now, he has decided that he cannot just let them walk away with a slap on the wrist. He steps forward and the entire animal stampede charges. A massive cloud of dust kicks up on the mountainside as these two grown men start running for their absolute lives. They are screaming, throwing their gear, and wondering why the local ecosystem has suddenly turned into a horror movie. The wild boar is snapping at their heels, and at this point, they are begging for a miracle. Seon watches them go, lifting a single hand to channel his magic. Here is how Druid defense systems actually work. By linking with the ancient Oran Sentinel tree as a magical antenna, a Druid can bind every single animal and plant in the forest into a collective network, which turns the entire woods into a living weapon against intruders. But the hilarious part? Seon's holy druidic motivation is that he was growing those premium mushrooms specifically to grill with beef at his next weekend cookout. You do not mess with a man's gourmet dinner plans. With a simple flick of his green glowing finger, the poachers realize they have been running in circles for 10 minutes, completely trapped in a localized magical labyrinth. They are exhausted, terrified, and realize this forest is definitely not normal. They sprint down a path, trying to find any exit, only to find our adorable baby fawn, Bangwool, blocking their way on a rock and letting out a squeaky, high-pitched battle cry. The lead thief, realizing his terrifying monster is actually just a tiny baby deer wearing a pink bandana, instantly loses his mind. He raises his shovel and swings it directly at Bangwool's head, showing he is a complete garbage human being. But before the metal can even touch her, a massive wooden root rips out of the ground, activating his bind magic. The roots completely shatter the shovel handle and wrap around his arm like a steel vise. Giant, thick vines surge from the dirt, hoisting both thieves into the air like caught insects. They are left hanging upside down, screaming that the literal trees are attacking them, while Seon and Bangwool watch with a deadpan stare. Our guy calmly pulls out his phone and dials a number. Hello? Village head? Do you have a minute? A little while later, the thieves are tied back to back on the ground with thick ropes, looking absolutely battered, and a local police car pulls up at the base of the trail. The village head, Stella, steps out of the car and instantly goes full unhinged anime boss. You thieving little punks! She runs over to Seon, making sure he didn't get hurt, completely ignoring the fact that the two criminals are the ones who look like they survived a blender. She asks why they are covered in bruises and bleeding from the nose, and Seon just hits them with a classic deadpan lie. I guess they rolled down the mountain while running. Stella gets a close look at their faces and realizes these are the exact same repeat offenders who stole her precious wild shoots last year. The police officer tells them that since Seon caught them on camera with a backpack full of stolen goods, their excuses are completely useless. But the lead poacher starts crying, screaming to the cop that the trees are possessed by demons and the animals tried to murder them. He points directly at Seon, calling him a fatty, which instantly makes our guy's face go pale with pure offense. He begs the officer to arrest Seon, claiming he is a dark shaman who controls ghosts and forest monsters. But he made a fatal mistake. You do not insult our guy in front of the local neighborhood grandma. Stella's glasses reflect a blinding white light as she literally starts burning with a fiery aura of pure rage. She grabs a massive wooden bat from the police car, screaming about them spouting crazy lies. She asks if she should slit their bellies and use their intestines as a skipping rope, which is a wild level of violence for a local grandmother. She threatens to crack their skulls open to play peekaboo, and Seon is standing there realizing that the local village head is by far the most terrifying boss fight in this entire region. The cop has to physically restrain her as they drag the criminals away, who are still screaming about the haunted trees. But as the police car drives off, a mysterious figure in black clothes watches the entire scene from the shadows. It is a local priest holding a heavy Bible who walks up the path looking completely baffled by the poacher's claims of a haunted mountain. He stops, looking directly at Seon, and Seon stares back, wondering who this random character is and why he is standing on his mountain. Seon's ancient memories instantly kick in. In his past life, he realized that religious clergy always fell into two very distinct categories. You either had the greedy, goblin-like hypocrites who used their position to steal from the poor, or you had the genuine, self-sufficient ascetics who lived simple lives, endured hardship, and proved their faith through action. Druids respected the second group. He looks at this new priest, wondering which category he falls into. The priest, Father Mateo, walks up and quotes scripture about how those who deny their sins only lead others deeper into the pit. The cop laughs it off, saying the thieves were just making up ghost stories to avoid jail time. He explains to Mateo that Sion is the new owner of the mountain and caught the thieves red-handed. Mateo introduces himself with a warm, honest smile, explaining that he runs the Dongwon Parish Monastery just over the ridge. And then he bows his head deeply, taking full responsibility for not securing the mountain trails properly and letting the poachers slip through. Sion is completely stunned. The monastery and his house share a massive open border, so securing it is a two-way street. But because Mateo immediately apologized without a single excuse, Sion realizes this man is a genuine high-character ascetic. The village head dumps out the thieves' backpack, revealing a massive haul of premium mushrooms, rare herbs, and wild plants. She suggests that since the thieves tore up both sides of the ridge, Sion and the father should split this highly valuable haul 50-50. But Sion immediately declines, saying he grew them to share with the village elders anyway. And Father Mateo matches his energy, smiling and saying the elders should have the lot, casually addressing the village head by her baptismal name, Stella. The police load the repeat offenders into the car, and Stella screams after them, telling them to rot in jail. The cop promises to keep them updated, and Stella continues hurling colorful top-tier curses as the car drives away, threatening to send them to heaven early. Mateo and Sion share a quiet, amused chuckle, instantly bonding over the sheer chaotic energy of their neighborhood grandmother. With the immediate threat handled, the heavy tension on the mountain completely dissolves, leaving behind a quiet, peaceful summer afternoon. A few days later, Sion's traditional hanok is finally finished, looking absolutely beautiful with clean stone paths and a gorgeous archway covered in blooming red roses. Stella visits, completely amazed at how fast the remodel was completed. Sion proudly tells her that it finally feels like a place where real people live and offers to treat her to a fresh salad using his newly harvested mana-infused tomatoes. But before they can eat, the front gate creaks open, and a familiar pair of worn work boots steps into the yard. It is Grandpa Zhang, looking incredibly awkward and scratching his head in embarrassment. He clears his throat and sheepishly asks if he can get some more of Sion's homegrown lettuce. He explains that he bought the exact same seeds from the exact same shop, but for some reason his crops taste like cardboard while Sion's have a legendary crisp snap that fills your mouth. Sion happily offers to pick him a whole basket, plus some fresh cabbage. For a druid, crops grown with nature force are packed with pure spiritual energy and nutrients, making them taste literally out of this world. Stella watches them, teasing Zhang for acting like a baby who needs to be fed by a kid. She scoffs, saying lettuce is just lettuce, and takes a bite of a leaf to prove her point. And then, scrunch. A literal lightning bolt of culinary enlightenment hits her brain. Her eyes go wide, her cheeks flush, and she completely drops her elegant grandma act to squeal like a schoolgirl, begging to take a giant bag home for herself. Sion and Zhang look at her, absolutely shell-shocked. Zhang joins them for meal prep while a cute orange tabby cat stretches in the yard. As Sion picks massive ruby-red tomatoes from his vine, Zhang mentions that Father Mateo and his monks are struggling to get by, making handmade soap at the monastery to pay their bills. Sion asks if they don't get parish donations, and Jiang explains that their specific order is strictly self-sufficient, meaning churchgoers don't support them financially. Worse, they are facing a severe crisis because they cannot find enough high-quality bamboo to make their special soap, and might have to shut down production entirely soon. Sion looks at the distant monastery. Mateo is a genuinely good man, and as a druid, helping an honest seeker of nature feels completely natural. He starts planning how he can use his magic to solve their resource shortage. A little while later, our guy gets to cooking. He proudly presents his masterpiece, a gorgeous W-tier plated tomato caprese salad. The seniors are instantly impressed by the presentation. It is a simple dish, freshly sliced, thick tomatoes layered with premium mozzarella cheese, drizzled with rich olive oil and fresh lemon juice. Jiang takes a bite, and both of their faces instantly light up as if they just entered food heaven. Jiang yells that it is the most refreshing, sweet, and tender thing he has ever tasted. But the real miracle happens to Stella. She has suffered from chronic, severe gastritis her entire life, meaning almost everything she eats causes a painful, burning stomach. But the moment she eats this tomato, she realizes her stomach feels incredibly warm, calm, and completely soothed. That is the healing nature force at work, literally repairing her cells. The two seniors instantly turn into greedy children, bickering and trying to steal the remaining tomatoes from the table. Stella tells Jiang to stop being greedy and leave some for the kid, and Sion just watches them fight with a warm smile. He realizes that for a druid, seeing people genuinely happy because of his crops is the highest form of praise. He happily heads back to the garden to harvest some more, feeling a deep, quiet sense of fulfillment. This is the true joy of living as a druid. Meanwhile, we cut to a highly prestigious, luxury hair salon in Cheongdam-dong, Seoul. A massive smartphone screen shows the comment section of Sion's Plant Butler YouTube channel, with thousands of fans absolutely obsessed with how cute Bangwol is. Hisu, our hyper-energy K-pop idol from the group Tracker, is screaming in his salon chair, telling the director to subscribe to the channel immediately. Siwoo, who is getting his pink hair styled, looks over with a deadpan expression, asking why Hisu is actively promoting his brother's private channel. Hisu explains that they need to pump those subscriber numbers up to keep the engagement high. He admits that if Drubbly Nim ever stops uploading, he will lose his favorite mealtime video companion. Siwoo is completely baffled. Drubbly? Hisu explains that is the perfect nickname he gave him because of how soft and sweet Siyeon sounds whenever he feeds Bangwol. The hairstylist laughs, realizing the channel owner is Siwoo's older brother, and notes that if he has Siwoo's genes, he must be incredibly handsome. Siwoo proudly smiles, boasting that even though Siyeon gained a lot of weight after getting sick when they were kids, everyone in the neighborhood agreed his brother was way prettier than him. We see a flashback of a sweet, handsome young Siyeon giving candy to a crying baby Siwoo. Hisu's eyes instantly spark like a shonen protagonist. A hidden winning lottery ticket! He realized that if Siyeon loses the weight, he is going to be a visual god. He stands up, his eye reflecting a dangerous, chaotic spark of pure marketing genius. Siwoo looks back, suddenly feeling a massive wave of anxiety. Hisu points a finger. You know how our idol group has been planning to shoot our own variety show content? We cut back to White Tiger Mountain, where a heavy rain is starting to fall on the peaceful Hanok. And Hisu drops the ultimate punchline hook, "How about we shoot our show at your brother's place?" Siyeon stands in the rain, completely unaware that a horde of high-energy K-pop idols is about to invade his peaceful sanctuary. Rainy season has officially descended upon Korea, and the heavens are absolutely dumping water over the entire countryside. But inside our guy's freshly renovated hanok, it is a completely different story. Siyeon lies on the clean wooden floor, watching the rain drum against the yard, feeling incredibly smug. The construction crew really did an elite job, and just rolling around on this warm wood feels like a cheat code for happiness. But then he remembers he is actually supposed to be a content creator now, so he drags himself up to film. He grabs his umbrella and steps outside into the pouring rain to harvest some fresh greens. Today is the big neighborhood cookout at the village hall, and he is bringing his legendary mana-infused lettuce to pair with the beef and stolen pine mushrooms. As he picks a massive, perfectly grown cabbage, he reflects on his channel's growth. His subscriber count has been exploding lately, which naturally brought out the classic internet trolls and haters. But before the hate comments can even sit there for 5 minutes, his loyal fan army completely ratios them into oblivion. It turns out having a mega famous K-pop idol brother means your comment section has its own elite guard of virtual protectors. He finishes packing his basket of pristine, magic-grown vegetables, steps out of his beautiful rose archway, and immediately realizes that walking to the village hall in this absolute deluge is going to be a miserable, soggy nightmare. Suddenly, a loud honk cuts through the sound of the rain. A tiny white farming truck comes sliding down the wet road, stopping right in front of him. The window rolls down, and Grandpa Jeong yells at him to quit standing in the storm like a lost puppy and hop inside. Cut to the village hall, where premium beef and those giant illegal pine mushrooms are sizzling on a hot grill. The entire neighborhood is gathered, and the smell of high-grade barbecue is filling the damp air. The village head Stella takes the microphone to start the official meeting. She tells everyone to quiet down and announces the grand victory of the week. They finally caught the serial root poacher who has been stealing the mountain's treasures for years. She explains that the thief would park his car near the river, slip past the monastery, and strip the deep forest bare. Father Mateo nods in agreement, looking peaceful as he sits with the elders. The entire room erupts into a massive round of applause for our guy Sieon, who is currently blushing and trying to disappear into his sweater. Stella tells everyone to eat up and celebrate the fact that the thief is headed straight for a long, well-deserved prison term. One of the elders takes a bite of the grilled pine mushroom, and his face practically glows as the rich, earthy aroma hits his palate. He is absolutely blown away that summer mushrooms can taste this sweet and fragrant, not knowing a druid's passive aura has been nurturing them. Seon steps up to the table, holding a fresh plate. He suggests they try a classic food combination he saw on YouTube, wrapping the beef, pine mushroom, and aged kimchi together. But Stella immediately shuts him down, lecturing him that premium matsutake mushrooms are far too precious to be drowned out by strong kimchi. Our guy is skeptical, so he stuffs the entire massive wrap into his mouth anyway. He chews slowly, and his shoulders slump as he realizes the old lady was absolutely right. The intense fragrance of the mushroom gets completely lost when combined. He laughs it off, admitting defeat, and promises to stick to eating them separately like a civilized human. A middle-aged man with glasses approaches, handing Sion a fresh plate of grilled meat. He tells Sion to eat more, joking that grilling is a job reserved for the youth leader. This is Hong Yoon, a local restaurant owner in his late 40s who is technically the youngest person in the village besides Sion. Sion looks at him, smelling the faint scent of delicious chicken broth, and a brilliant idea suddenly sparks in his mind. He scratches his head and asks Yoon if it would be okay for him to raise a few chickens in his yard. In his head, Sion is picturing cute little yellow chicks and endless baskets of fresh organic eggs. But Yoon immediately hits him with a harsh dose of reality, warning him that chicks are only cute for about 3 days. After that, they crow at 2 a.m., turn your beautiful yard into a giant toilet, and destroy everything. Sion's romantic fantasy of farm life instantly shatters, and he realizes he needs to think this through a lot more. He smiles warmly, realizing that part of being a successful druid is knowing which fires not to light. He looks around the bustling hall, filled with laughing elders, drinking, and singing. A soft, happy smile blooms on his face. For the first time since leaving his toxic corporate job, he feels his empty, exhausted heart quietly filling back up with warmth. But the next morning, the peaceful vibe is completely shattered as his phone buzzes with an extreme weather alert. A severe high-risk flood warning has been issued for the entire region. He looks out at his rain-soaked yard, telling his orange tabby cat to get inside before it gets washed away. While his greenhouse and drainage systems are fully secured, he looks up at the steep mountain slopes with genuine concern. His premium, mana-infused grapevines are currently hanging heavy, and if this brutal downpour keeps pelting them, the entire harvest will be ruined. He could easily use a druidic spell to instantly ripen and harvest them, but his pride as a true druid stops him. Cheating nature's cycle is a massive L. He clenches his fist, whispering to the grapes to hang in there and resist the storm. Suddenly, his phone ringtone blares loudly through the house. He looks at the screen. It's Grandpa Jiang. He answers, asking what's wrong, and Jiang's voice comes through the speaker, completely panicked and screaming that things are incredibly bad. Sion asks if he is injured, but Jiang yells that if he were hurt, he would have called the ambulance, not a neighbor. He explains that his heavily pregnant cow, number 28, has suddenly collapsed. The vet is on the scene, but the cow is panicking, and they need raw physical strength to handle her. Jiang is practically in tears, and our guy can hear the desperate, painful cries of the animal in the background. Sion's eyes go wide as he swallows hard, realizing that a life-or-death crisis has just struck the farm. Lightning flashes across the dark sky as the storm rages over White Tiger Mountain. Inside Grandpa Jiang's couch, the herd is in a state of absolute frenzy, crying out in terror. Sion's boots splash hard into the puddles as he sprints into the barn, drenched to the bone, calling out for Jiang. A young man with glasses and a lab coat turns around, looking completely exhausted and stressed. Sion demands to know what happened, and Jiang explains that number 28 suddenly lost all strength and collapsed, while her companion, number 34, refuses to leave her side. Our guy notices that even though Jiang calls his cows by numbers so he won't get emotionally attached when they are sold, his face is currently deathly pale with genuine grief. Sion asks if they should move the other cows away, but Jiang says they are far too sensitive and panicked right now. The vet explains that they need to get number 28 back on her feet immediately. If a heavy cow stays on her side for too long, lethal gas builds up in her stomach, crushing her lungs. He looks at Sion, asking if he is the strong neighbor Jiang called, begging him to help. Using his massive physical strength, Sion grips the heavy cow, bracing his feet against the concrete, and manages to heave her upright, but the poor animal is still hyperventilating, her eyes rolled back in pure terror. Sieun points out that she can't breathe properly because she is hyperventilating from panic, but the vet yells that they can't use standard chemical sedatives because she is carrying a calf. Sieun looks at him calmly, saying he isn't talking about using drugs. He mentions he has a specific natural way of calming animals down when they are in extreme pain, but the vet looks at him like he has lost his mind. Sieun ignores him, taking a deep, steady breath, and opens his mouth to emit a soft, beautiful druidic humming melody. The ancient Gaelic tones resonate through the metal rafters of the barn, carrying a warm, glowing green wave of nature force. The vet's jaw completely drops, his entire body flinching as the magical vibration hits him, and right before his eyes, the entire herd of panic-thrashing cows instantly falls completely silent, resting their heads on the railings in pure tranquility. The vet stands frozen, staring at Sieun as if he just witnessed a man turn water into wine. Sieun finishes his melody with a warm smile, asking if she is calm enough for treatment now. The vet can only think one thing. Who in the world is this guy? A little while later, inside Grandpa Zhang's cozy living room, the vet takes a long, slow sip of warm water, still looking completely dazed as Zhang offers them some tea. He reviews his clipboard, explaining that the cow's collapse was caused by acute, stress-induced inflammation, but thankfully, both her and the unborn calf are now perfectly safe. Jiang lets out a massive sigh of relief, thanking the vet for saving his livelihood. But the moment Jiang steps away, the vet turns to Sieun, his glasses reflecting a sharp, suspicious light. He demands to know what that bizarre song was, and how on earth it managed to pacify a barn full of panicked, half-ton beasts in 3 seconds. Sieun starts sweating, realizing he has backed himself into a massive corner. The vet leans in, asking if he is using some kind of hypnosis or if he is actually a real-life animal shaman. But before our guy can stutter out an excuse, the vet suddenly grabs him by the shoulders, his eyes shining with desperate excitement. "Could you teach that technique to me too?" He explains that an ability like that would be an absolute cheat code in an animal hospital, saving countless vets from being kicked or bitten by terrified pets. Sieun immediately waves his hands in panic, lying through his teeth that it is just a simple old Western folk song he found on a random relaxation forum online. Our guy sweats profusely, knowing that Druid humming is a complex magical art of syncing one's life force with nature's pulse. It's not something you can just learn from a quick tutorial. Grandpa Zhang walks back in, chuckling, and tells the vet that some people are just born with a natural sweet-talk gift that animals can't resist. He mentions how the notoriously aggressive local dog Baduk turned into a purring baby on Sieun's lap, which makes the vet gasp in shock. The vet pinches the bridge of his nose, letting out a long sigh of professional envy. He recalls that one of his elite professors back in vet school possessed a similar unexplained natural aura that made animals instantly trust him. He looks at Sieun with a look of pure comedic jealousy, muttering that some people are just born with cheat codes. Zhang smiles warmly, realizing these two are actually the same age. He slaps the vet on the back, telling them they should drop the professional boundaries and just become friends. The vet smiles, revealing he is 29, and Sieun admits he is 28, making him the younger brother. The vet, Han Tae-min, scratches his head and asks if he can call Sieun in the future if a dangerous, massive farm animal ever gets out of hand. Sieun smiles playfully, holding up a finger and joking that he doesn't work for free. Taemin looks at him, perfectly serious, and says he is happy to pay standard emergency consultant fees. But our guy just giggles, saying he doesn't want money. A simple thank you or a cheap bag of local sweet potatoes is more than enough. Taemin stares at him, a warm smile spreading across his face as he realizes Sieun is a genuinely bizarre but incredibly good-natured guy. He reaches out, shaking Sieun's hand, and says he is looking forward to working together. Sieun happily shakes back, telling Taemin he can drop the polite language and just call him Hyung from now on. Sieun looks out at the rain, smiling as he realizes he has just forged a valuable new bond with a fellow protector of animals. A few days later, the heavy late summer monsoon is still dragging on. Sieun sits on his porch with his selfie stick, starting up a new vlog for his channel. He explains to his viewers that the heavy rain has kept him from doing his usual gardening content, but he wants to share the relaxing, beautiful atmosphere of the Hanak in the rain. In reality, his brother Siwoo has been blowing up his phone, aggressively nagging him to upload more and warning him that the tracker members are officially planning to visit his farm soon. Our guy can already feel a massive headache coming on, imagining a bunch of high-energy city slicker idols running around his peaceful mountain. He walks through the stone yard under his umbrella, filming how the sound of the rain beautifully shifts depending on where you stand. He slides open the glass door and steps inside his spacious professional vinyl greenhouse. He shows his viewers how satisfying the raindrops sound against the thick plastic roof, but suddenly, he freezes. A strange, faint, magical vibration ripples through his senses. He spots a dark, cluttered corner of the greenhouse behind some stacked wooden pallets. Suddenly, his orange tabby cat jumps out from behind the boxes, glowing with a faint, startled energy. Seon chuckles, asking the cat what it is doing hiding back there. But the cat lets out a soft, urgent cry, pointing its tail toward a giant cardboard box. Seon steps closer, pulling the cardboard flap open, and his eyes instantly stretch wide in pure shock. Huddled inside the box, crying and shivering from the damp cold, is a massive, dirty, pregnant stray cat, surrounded by a litter of tiny, wide-eyed newborn kittens. So, the heavy monsoon rain is still pounding against the pavement outside, and inside the local veterinary clinic, our guy Seon is waiting anxiously with a box of tiny shivering kittens. He had found them huddled inside his greenhouse, gasping for breath alongside their exhausted mother, and immediately rushed them to get professional help. The moment he found them, he tapped into his wild resonance magic, and the vision that flooded his mind was heartbreaking. Their small dirt cave on the mountain had completely collapsed under the relentless rain, and the mother cat had carried her babies one by one down the slippery slopes, drawn to the warm, comforting nature force radiating from Seon's greenhouse. He gently pets them, whispering that they did an incredible job surviving such a terrifying ordeal. Suddenly, a heavy pair of footsteps approaches from the back room, and a familiar voice calls out his name. It's Lee Sumin, the vet who saved Grandpa Jong's cow, and he is currently carrying a massive, incredibly round black goat like it is an oversized plush toy. Sumin sets the goat down, walks into his office, and sits down at his desk, completely shocked to find Sehyun's name on the registration chart. Sehyun admits he had no idea this was Sumin's clinic, and Sumin modestly laughs, saying it is just a tiny, quiet place to care for the neighborhood's stray animals. Sumin looks over at the box, asking about the sudden influx of feline patients. He gently lifts the mother cat out of the box, giving her a thorough checkup, and confirms that while they have some minor runny noses and discharge, they are actually in remarkably good shape. He advises Sehyun to get them vaccinated and scheduled for a procedure later on, though he quickly adds he isn't trying to pressure him. Sehyun lets out a massive sigh of relief, thanking him, and Sumin just smiles, saying he was simply doing his job. But then, Sumin suddenly freezes, his eyes wide behind his glasses, and he asks Sehyun if he could quickly help him out with a high-risk patient in the back. Sehyun is confused, wondering what kind of animal could possibly need his help inside a standard city clinic. They walk down the sterile hallway, entering the intensive care unit where the most critical, high-risk animals are kept in heated oxygen chambers. Sumin points to a middle cage, and inside is a chubby ginger cat wearing a massive, ridiculous lion mane collar, staring back at them with a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. Sehyun notices a plastic feeding tube taped directly into her nose, and Sumin explains that she refuses to touch a single bite of food, forcing him to keep her on a liquid diet just to keep her alive. Sehyun asks what could have possibly driven a cat to such an extreme state of depression. Sumin's expression darkens as he explains her tragic backstory. She was originally brought in by her owner suffering from severe liver failure. But after the initial testing, hospital fees, and daily IV drip treatments quickly piled up to nearly $1 million, the owner decided to completely ghost the clinic, leaving the sick cat behind to avoid paying the bill. And the moment the cat realized her beloved human had abandoned her, she completely shut down, refusing to touch a single treat and curling up into a miserable, silent ball. Animals cannot speak, but they can feel the crushing weight of grief and betrayal just like we do. Sehyun is stunned, realizing that Sumin has been covering the incredibly expensive liquid diet and daily medication entirely out of his own pocket. Our guy looks at him with newfound respect, realizing Sumin is a certified W-tier human being. Sumin just blushes, giving a warm, humble smile, and says he simply cannot turn a blind eye when he knows he has the power to save a life. He explains that he needs to replace her feeding tube because she has been thrashing around, but she is far too aggressive for him to handle alone, so he asks if Sehyun can use his magical touch to calm her. Sehyun nods, his pride as a druid instantly kicking in. He steps up to the glass door, and Sumin nervously warns him to be extremely careful because she will not hesitate to bite or scratch his face off. Sehyun gently opens the door, telling her in a soft, soothing voice that there is absolutely nothing to be afraid of. He reaches out, gently tapping her nose, and the cat instantly melts, nuzzling her face into his hand and letting out a loud, rhythmic purr. Sumin looks like his entire reality has just been shattered, complaining that he is the one who feeds her and cleans her litter box every single day, yet she treats him like a mortal enemy. Sion just giggles, thinking to himself that there isn't a single animal on Earth that can resist a druid's magic-infused aura. Sumin grabs the new feeding tube, ready to insert it, but Sion stops him, asking Sumin to try offering her a squeeze treat instead. Sumin is skeptical but pulls out a standard liquid cat treat, warning Sion that she has rejected every single premium brand of food for days. Sion gently strokes her head, quietly whispering to her that Sumin is a truly good, loving person who has been working tirelessly to protect her. He channels a tiny, warm wave of nature force into her body, and the cat's eyes suddenly light up with life. She leans forward, happily licking the treat straight from Sumin's hand, and the vet let out a loud, comedic scream of pure shock. "She's actually eating!" Sumin looks at Sihyun with wide, trembling eyes, wondering how this is even scientifically possible, and Sihyun just smiles, saying she finally recognized Sumin's kind heart. Sumin immediately baby talks the cat, tears of pure joy welling up in his eyes as he realizes they can finally remove the painful nose tube. Sion watches him, fully enjoying the heartwarming scene as Sumin continues to feed her. But as he looks closer, he notices that Sumin's hands are completely covered in tiny scratches, scars, and band-aids, the silent painful medals of honor from a lifetime of trying to save animals that didn't understand he was trying to help them. Our guy smiles softly, realizing that Sumin possesses the most powerful healing magic in the entire world, a warm, deeply caring heart. The next day, we cut to a highly polished professional dressing room in Seoul. Hisu, wearing a stylish sailor-themed stage outfit, is lying on the couch with a blissful smile, listening to a video of rain sounds. The other tracker members look at him like he is a complete weirdo, asking how he can possibly listen to rain ASMR during an actual monsoon. Saiwoo is sitting nearby, scrolling through his phone and deadpans that his brother must have completely run out of things to film if he is uploading rain videos. Hisu immediately defends the channel, saying all the comments are calling it a masterpiece. Hisu happily notes that the Plant Butler channel has evolved from basic gardening into dieting, animal rescuing, and now high-end ASMR, making it the ultimate healing channel. Suddenly, their manager kicks the door open, telling them to pack up their gear because it's time to head to their next broadcast schedule. Siwoo sighs, stretching his arms, and mutters that he wishes he could go back to the quiet countryside already. He looks over at the couch to wake up Jerome, who has been resting silently, but as he gets closer, his expression instantly turns into a mask of pure, chilling horror. Jerome is completely collapsed on the sofa, clutching his chest, his face violently flushed and sweating as he gasps for air under a dangerously high sudden fever. Siwoo rushes forward, pressing his hand against Jerome's forehead, and the rest of the members instantly crowd around the sofa in a state of absolute panic. Siwoo screams that he is burning up, telling Hisu to grab some medicine, and says they need to rush him to the hospital immediately. Jerome tries to cough out a weak, stubborn reply, claiming it is just a mild cold and he will be perfectly fine once the medication kicks in. The leader tells him to quit worrying about their busy schedule and focus entirely on resting, warning him not to push his body past its limits. Hisu hands him the fever reducer, complaining that Jerome gets severely sick half the year and has a structurally failing constitution. Siwoo points out that if he is this sick, there is absolutely no way he can travel to the countryside this weekend to film their variety show, but Jerome grits his teeth, stubbornly insisting that he refuses to be left out of their group's special project. Hisu tries to lighten the heavy mood, teasing Jerome that he only looks gorgeous when he is healthy, but turns into a completely different haggard person when he is sick. Jerome weakly glares at him, and the other members just sigh, completely exhausted by their constant bickering. Siwoo looks down at his sick friend, his expression filled with deep, silent anxiety. The atmosphere in the dressing room is incredibly heavy, and everyone is praying that Jerome's fever will break before the weekend. Jerome lets out another heavy cough, looking completely miserable. The next day, we cut to the bustling, high-energy streets of Gayang Traditional Market. Sion is walking through the crowded stalls with Grandpa Jong, who is asking him about the stray cats he rescued. Sion explains that the mother cat is currently recovering at Sumin's clinic, but he decided to take the kittens home to raise them. He gushes about how adorable they are, counting them on his fingers, and Jiang just chuckles, teasing him for spending so much money on cat toys. Jiang advises him to raise them well, noting that cats are excellent little workers who will keep his farm completely free of mice and bugs, and Siyeon laughs, saying that isn't exactly why he took them in. Siyeon suddenly remembers Sumin's advice, telling Jiang that he needs to stop by the seed shop because Sumin told him cats absolutely love perilla leaves. Grandpa Jiang stops dead in his tracks, his eyes practically popping out of his head as he screams, "My boy! You mean catnip, not perilla leaves! Why on earth would a cat eat perilla leaves?" Siyeon's face turns into a bright, flaming red mask of pure, humiliating embarrassment. Jiang laughs heartily, teasing him that even a tech-illiterate old grandfather knows what catnip is, and says our guy is going to need more babysitting than the actual kittens. Siyeon walks behind him, covering his red face in shame, wishing he could literally crawl into a hole and disappear forever. To think a legendary ancient Druid master just got completely schooled on basic botany by a local cattle farmer. They walk into a Juma's handmade tofu shop to pick up some fresh soy milk for dinner. Sihyun politely orders 3 blocks of fresh tofu and 2 bottles of cold soy milk, but as he waits, a loud, nervous cough from the shop owner draws his attention. Sihyun notices the owner is casting anxious, trembling glances toward a corner of the shop, and the entire atmosphere feels incredibly tense and hostile. Sihyun slowly turns his head, and his eyes narrow as his druidic senses lock onto a shady customer standing near the back wall. The man is wearing a dark, oversized hoodie with a cap pulled low, and his entire body is radiating a cold, heavy, and incredibly hostile spiritual pressure. The hooded man notices Siyeon staring, flinches, and pulls his cap down even further, trying to hide his face in the shadows. He grabs his purchase and immediately storms out of the shop, the front bell chiming loudly behind him. The shop owner lets out a massive, trembling sigh of relief, and Grandpa Jiang asks who that incredibly sketchy guy was. The owner leans over the counter, whispering in a panicked tone that the man is a dangerous, highly violent criminal. He explains that rumor has it he was a notorious gangster in Seoul who used his fists to terrorize people, and he just got released from prison before moving down to their quiet village. Zhang's expression turns serious as he mutters that he hopes nothing bad happens in their peaceful neighborhood, and the owner nods in agreement. Siyeon watches the empty doorway, thoughtfully repeating the word criminal in his head. We see the hooded stranger walking through the crowded market streets, sensing everyone whispering, pointing, and casting terrified glances at him. He scowls in frustration, looking deeply miserable and isolated. That evening, at the quiet hanok, the sunset is casting a beautiful orange glow over the tiled roofs. Siyeon is sitting on his porch, playing with the adorable kittens using a little leaf toy, but his expression is incredibly solemn. The word criminal has triggered a very old, dark memory from his past life as the Druid Theophilo. It is a memory of a dark day he spent centuries trying to completely forget. Back during his early training days as a young druid, once a month, he and his master would accompany the holy knights to the kingdom's high-security prison. Their sacred duty was to perform purification rituals to cleanse and reform the hearts of the most violent criminals. While the other young druids dreaded the task, young Theophilo loved following his master, holding the sacred ritual branch with pride. But on that specific day, they entered the deepest, darkest isolation cell and faced a monstrous criminal tied securely to a heavy wooden chair, radiating a foul, nauseating stench of pure, rot-filled decay. He was a rogue priest from a fallen tribe, arrested for the horrific crimes of cannibalism and dark demon worship. His master began chanting the holy purification mantra, and young Theophilo stepped forward, raising his branch to sweep away the corruption. But as he got close, the tied man slowly lifted his head, his eyes flashing a terrifying blood-red light as he snarled, "You look delicious!" And in a split second, the man snapped his head forward with monstrous speed and violently bit down into young Theophilo's wrist, tearing through flesh and bone in a spray of blood. The horrific wound eventually healed into a permanent, ugly scar. But because rumors spread that it was a demonic bite mark, the other druids shunned him, and he spent years living in isolated misery. Siyeon rubs his wrist, shivering as the phantom memory of that dark, putrid energy gives him goosebumps even now. But as he looks down, he realizes that the hooded gangster at the tofu shop didn't feel anything like that demonic priest. The gangster was tense, defensive, and incredibly lonely, but there was absolutely no dark, malicious decay inside his aura. He was just a guy trying to survive. Siyeon gently pets a kitten, deciding not to judge the man based on local rumors. Suddenly, his phone blares loudly, startling the kittens. He answers, and Siwoo's cheerful voice comes through the speaker. Siwoo happily announces that the tracker members and the camera crew are officially heading down to his farm this weekend to shoot their variety show. He asks if Siyeon can prepare some extra bedding for the crew, and Siyeon smiles, saying he will have everything perfectly ready. Siwoo laughs, telling him they will see him soon, but just as he is about to hang up, his voice suddenly drops and his expression turns incredibly solemn and nervous. Siwoo asks his brother for a massive, desperate favor and pans his phone camera down to show Jerome, who has completely collapsed on the floor, burning with a critical, dangerously high fever that medicine cannot touch. The ultimate idol invasion is about to begin under the worst possible circumstances. So let's talk about the absolute phenomenon that is Tracker, a global idol group so famous that their faces are literally plastered across every giant billboard in the country. We have Hisu on main vocals, Jerome as the main dancer, Leo holding down the leader and rapper spot, Kay as the sub-vocalist, and of course Siwoo as the legendary center. They are setting global records, selling out stadiums, and their brand new album is currently charting at #1. And speaking of these superstars, Hisu is currently at a rest stop eating a corn dog, looking completely oblivious to his own fame. He is staring at a TV screen, admiring how good they look on camera, while behind him, the rest of the group is having a complete meltdown. Leo is aggressively shaking a claw machine like a degenerate gambler, having spent his entire allowance trying to win a stuffed animal. Siwoo is facepalming, wondering who gave him money, and asks where Jerome went. Kay says Jerome went to the convenience store to buy water, which instantly triggers Siwoo's manager alarms. And sure enough, Jerome has walked outside without a mask, and his top-tier visuals are currently drawing a massive crowd of screaming fans. A girl is practically in tears, begging for an autograph, and Jerome is standing there looking incredibly overwhelmed. Suddenly, a hand grabs his wrist, and Siwoo drags him away at Mach speed, yelling apologies to the crowd as they escape. Siwoo lectures him for being an idiot and forgetting his mask, and Jerome weakly mutters that he was still half asleep. The manager pulls the black van up, screaming at them to get in, and they speed away as the crowd cheers. Siwoo sighs in his seat, praying that his chaotic members won't cause total ruin once they arrive at his brother's peaceful farm. He looks out the window, his eyes softening, as the van passes the highway sign for Guyang County. He can't help but smile, excited to finally show them his brother's cozy home. Meanwhile, back at the Hanok, the birds are chirping peacefully on the tiled roof. Siyeon is currently face down on a yoga mat, grinding out a grueling plank routine while his orange cat watches from a bench. He is sweating, pushing his out-of-shape body past its limits because he knows that strengthening his physical vessel is the only way to hold more nature force. And his hard work is paying off. With his body stabilizing, the amount of magical energy leaking away has completely decreased. He sits cross-legged in deep meditation, basking in a warm, glowing green wave of pure mana. He hears a soft rustle, opens his eyes, and finds his entire stray cat family and a bird gathered around him, nuzzling his arms for affection. He checks his phone, realizing it is already 9 in the morning and the idols are about to arrive any second. Right on cue, the doorbell chimes. He slides the gate open with a warm smile, and finding the entire group standing there in a perfectly coordinated, stylish pose. They hit him with their official synchronized team slogan, "Racing toward the top! We are Tracker!" Siyeon stands there, sweat dropping, holding a tiny kitten, completely overwhelmed by their intense idol energy. Siwoo runs up to hug him, asking how he has been, and Siyeon laughs, asking if the trip was exhausting. Siwoo complains that the members drained his energy before they even left, and Hisu is standing behind him staring at Siyeon. Siyeon notices Hisu has been dead staring at him for a solid 10 seconds without blinking. He nervously scratches his cheek, asking if there is something on his face, and Hisu blushes, screaming that it is just amazing to see Druid in person. Siyeon is completely baffled, realizing he has a celebrity fanboy. The camera director, Kim Hanbyul, steps up to shake his hand, thanking him for letting them film on his private property. Siyeon tells them to film as much as they like as long as they don't trouble the village, and the director practically sparkles with gratitude. Siyeon tells them to come inside and unpack their luggage, and thus begins Tracker's first experience in the countryside. They walk through the lush green forests, play with the adorable kittens on the porch, and heal their exhausted minds. Well, except for Siwoo, who is currently screaming in absolute unhinged terror because a tiny smiling green caterpillar landed on his arm. The day passes by in a flash, and the beautiful evening sunset soon blankets the Hanok in a warm golden light. Sihyun watches Siwoo bickering with the director, smiling as he realizes his little brother is a natural at taking charge of the atmosphere. Our guy heads over to prepare dinner, but stops as he spots a large paper bag left sitting on the grass. He walks over, noticing a handwritten note taped to the front. Hyung, I don't wear these clothes anymore. I thought they'd suit you, so I brought them. He pulls the bag open, revealing a premium, vibrant purple tracksuit, but as he lifts it, a small white piece of paper falls out. It's a brand new store receipt. Sion realizes that Siwoo didn't just bring old clothes, he went out and bought this expensive outfit specifically for him. A warm, emotional wave hits Sion's chest. As an ancient druid, he spent his entire past life caring for others, but being the one cared for by someone else is still a deeply unfamiliar feeling. His throat tightens, and he can't help but smile, holding the tracksuit up and immediately bragging to the kittens that his little brother bought it for him. Suman-style heartwarming energy is off the charts. The sun sets, the stars come out, and Siwoo wraps up the day's recording, waving to their livestream viewers. The director yells, "Cut!" and Hisu immediately collapses on the porch floor, exhausted and starving. The members groan about how hard they worked, but in the corner, Jerome is sitting silently, clutching his head as a dark, heavy shadow of exhaustion covers him. He weakly apologizes to the manager, saying he has hit his limit. His vision goes blurry, and he can barely keep his eyes open. Hisu runs over, panicking because Jerome looks incredibly sick, and the manager and Kay join them, noting that his chronic weakness is acting up much worse than usual today. Sion slides the screen door open, asking if there is a problem, and Siwoo runs up, begging his brother to help because Jerome is too weak to even stand. Sion looks at Jerome, his expression turning serious. His eyes flash emerald green, tapping into his druidic sight, and he gasps. Jerome's inner life force is dangerously depleted, a black void of emptiness swirling inside his chest. Sion realizes that Jerome was born with a severe, chronic lack of nature force, meaning his spiritual battery is constantly leaking dry. Siwoo looks at his brother, asking if he can do that. Sion nods, telling him to wait, and heads straight for the kitchen. Siwoo lets out a sigh of relief as Sion's footsteps fade down the hall. A few minutes later, Sion returns, carrying a beautifully crafted, steaming cup of tea. He sets it down in front of Jerome, asking him to drink it while it is hot. Jerome looks at the cup, completely dazed, realizing it is a unique, glowing herbal tea with fresh orange slices and wild white flowers floating on top. Jerome sits silently on the porch, holding the warm teacup, wondering if a simple herbal tea can actually help his severe condition. He takes a slow, cautious sip, and suddenly, his eyes stretch wide as a massive golden wave of honey-like sweetness floods his entire body. Sion asks with a gentle smile if the tea is to his liking, and Jerome gasps, screaming that he has never tasted anything this sweet and delicious in his entire life. Siwoo is completely surprised, asking to try some, and takes a quick sip from the cup, only to immediately make a face and complain that it tastes incredibly bitter. Sion laughs, explaining that the tea's flavor changes entirely depending on the drinker's physical state. Because Jerome has a severe lack of nature force, his body absorbs the mana like a dry sponge, making it taste like sweet honey. Jerome touches his head, completely amazed as his chronic painful headache vanishes in an instant, leaving his vision crystal clear. The manager runs over, asking if he wants to go inside and sleep, but Jerome stands up with a bright smile, flexing his arms, and yells that he feels so incredibly energized he could shoot an entire second episode right now. The manager's jaw completely drops, and the entire room freezes in absolute shock as they stare at Jerome standing tall. The manager screams that Jerome is in peak condition, something he hasn't even seen after a full weekend of sleep, and points out that Jerome didn't even take his headache medicine today. He stares at Sion, realizing the cause of this medical miracle is the herbal tea. He grabs Sihyun by the shoulders in a state of absolute frantic desperation, begging to know where he can buy this tea. He pleads with our guy to sell them some, screaming that they will pay literally whatever price he wants. Sihyun hesitates. Things crafted by a druid with high-density nature force can act as either powerful medicine or lethal poison if handled by people who don't understand magic. In ancient Britannia, druids never sold such sacred items carelessly, and Sion knows he must protect his secrets. But seeing how deeply the manager cares for Jerome, his expression softens, and he promises to prepare another batch for tomorrow. The manager literally starts crying with joy, sniffling about how emotional he is to see Jerome looking healthy for once. Sion looks up at the bright night moon, a warm, satisfied smile on his face. On the porch, the tracker members are celebrating, dancing and cheering around a laughing Jerome, and accompanied by the peaceful sound of chirping insects, Tracker's first night in the countryside comes to a close. The next morning, the sun rises over the quiet hannock as birds chirp on the roof. Jerome slowly opens his eyes, waking up on his futon as the morning light fills the room. He stretches his arms, yawning, and realizes that for the first time in his life, he slept deeply without waking up a single time. He hears loud, cheerful voices coming from the yard and looks out to find Sion teaching the rest of the group how to gently harvest fresh cherry tomatoes while the camera crew records. Jerome gasps, realizing they have already started shooting and he completely overslept. But before he can panic, the door slides open and Siwoo and the manager walk in with a warm smile holding a fresh cup of tea. Siwoo teases him for being a sleeping beauty, saying they tried to wake him up but he was out cold, and hands him the hot cup, saying Sian brewed it early this morning specifically for him. Jerome looks at the golden liquid, the lemon slice floating on top, and holds the cup close, his heart filling with deep, silent gratitude. Outside in the garden, Sion looks back at the porch, smiling. He is relieved to see the treatment is working so well. He knew Jerome was practically burning through his own life force to dance because he was born with a severe lack of nature force. Seeing Jerome reminded him of a young elven child from the long-term tribe he had met during his ancient Druid days. That child suffered from the exact same severe deficit, and back then, his master warned that even a fortune couldn't save them. Young Theophilo could only channel tiny drops of his own mana to temporarily ease the child's agony, watching helplessly as the child eventually closed their eyes forever and departed for the elven afterlife of Tir na Nog. That painful memory of helplessness had haunted him for centuries, which is why he refused to let Jerome suffer the same fate. But unlike the barren, dying lands of ancient Britannia, modern Korea is overflowing with rich elixirs and high-grade herbs. Sion smiles, holding a fresh pot, knowing this time he has more than enough power to save a life. He had chopped fragrant lemongrass, cleaned and dried his legendary 100,000,001 wild ginseng roots, and blended them perfectly using his advanced druidic magic to create the ultimate spiritual battery recharger. It was a masterpiece crafted specifically to heal Jerome. Jerome takes another sip of the tea on the porch, watching a tiny white bird fly down from the sky. Siwoo and Hisu turn around, and their jaws instantly drop in absolute shock. Jerome is sitting there, and his physical appearance has undergone a massive upgrade. His eyes are crystal clear, his skin is glowing with a brilliant, healthy radiance, and he is smiling as the tiny bird perches on his finger. He looks like a literal fantasy prince. Siwoo and Hisu let out a loud comedic scream of pure disbelief. Hisu immediately pulls out his phone, yelling at him not to move so he can take a picture of this legendary visual upgrade. The manager yells at them to stop messing around and get over to the cameras for their scheduled live stream. The group gathers in front of the camera, waving and shouting, "Hello, crackers!" Hisu takes a bite of a fresh cherry tomato, looking at the chat on his phone, and brags to their millions of viewers about how delicious Sihyun's hand-grown magic tomatoes are. Kei tells him to stop teasing the fans because he is making them look greedy, and the live chat is currently scrolling at Mach speed. Siwoo pushes them out of the way, telling the fans to ignore those two idiots, and points the camera toward the porch to show them something truly amazing. He pans the lens over, revealing Jerome, who flashes a dazzling, sparkling wink to the camera, looking completely rested and healthy. The live chat completely explodes with millions of comments screaming about his legendary visuals being back. Jerome promises to keep working hard to stay healthy, and Hisu happily agrees. But as Hisu looks toward the front gate, his expression suddenly freezes and he points a finger. The camera pans over to show Sion standing near his rose wall, humming a soft, beautiful melody. And right on cue, several wild white birds fly down, gracefully landing on his head and shoulders like a scene straight out of a Disney movie. Hisu and Kei are completely stunned, and Hisu yells that Siwoo's brother is a total real-life druid. Even the live chat comments are screaming that Sion is a legendary forest sage. But as they are streaming, a pair of tiny brown hooves suddenly steps onto the stone path. Hisu blinks, looking down, and finds our baby fawn, Bangwol, standing near the greenhouse, currently chewing on a massive leaf of lettuce. Hisu lets out a loud, excited scream, "A water deer! It's Bangwol from the video!" And the members immediately run toward her to pet her. Bangwol looks up, seeing a horde of high-energy, screaming strangers charging directly at her, and her eyes go completely wide with panic. She takes a deep breath and lets out her signature deafening metallic screamer cry, "Ree!" Hisu clutches his ears in agony, and Kei literally collapses on the floor as his soul leaves his body from the sheer shock of the sound. The entire yard is thrown into absolute hilarious chaos, and Bangwoo just stands there looking extremely proud of herself. The ultimate idle countryside vacation has officially peak collapsed. We start off the morning with a core memory being absolute violence for Hisu's eardrums. Our guy Siyeon comes sprinting out of the hanok, fully prepared for a state of emergency. He drops to his knees to cuddle his small chaotic companion, whispering that she does not need to use her vocal cords like a weapon. Hisu is standing there looking incredibly guilty, realizing his pure idle excitement just gave a wild animal a massive jump scare. He reaches out a hand to apologize, but Bangwoo looks at him like he is a dangerous predator who just made a very bold tactical error. Hisu drops down to her level, giving her the ultimate soft boy idle eyes and speaking in his gentlest voice. Bangwoo flinches, her tiny ears twitching as she processes whether this highly polished human is actually a threat. She takes a slow, cautious sniff of his finger, letting her animal instincts do the math. And just like that, the K-pop charm works its magic as she starts rubbing her face against his hand. Hisu is officially a chosen one. Siyeon laughs as his fawn gets completely pampered by the nation's top idols in his own front yard. Kei and Leo are standing in the background, recovering from the fact that a tiny baby water deer almost sent them to the afterlife with a single scream. The evening sky is turning a beautiful, warm orange, and the fresh mountain air is doing exactly what it always does, making everyone absolutely starving. Siyeon waves them toward the sliding doors, announcing that he has spent the afternoon preparing a proper countryside feast. The boys follow him inside, their mouths practically watering as they step over the threshold, and let me tell you, our guy did not skip a single detail. We are talking high-density comfort food, fresh cheese pizza, steaming mountain herb pasta, and vibrant garden salads. Watching these kids dig in with pure, unbridled joy makes Siyeon's lips curl into a genuine smile. After years of isolated corporate burnout, this warm, noisy house feels incredible. Tracker's main dancer Jerome is currently pulling a cheese stretch that looks like a high-budget commercial, his physical energy completely restored. The cameras are rolling as the boys deliver their boundless natural energy to their future vlog viewers, completely forgets their exhausting idle schedules. As the sun slowly dips behind the ridge, the sound of warm, collective laughter echoes through the quiet valleys of White Tiger Mountain. The next morning, the local birds are chirping, signaling that it is officially time for the K-pop invasion to pack up and head back to reality. Jerome is hauling his massive suitcase out to the van, looking like a completely different person compared to the pale, feverish kid who arrived here. Siyeon meets him by the trunk, thanking him for working so hard during their short 2-day countryside experience. But before they go, our guy pulls out a brown paper gift bag with a massive proud smile on his face. He hands Jerome a beautifully sealed glass jar filled with fresh chamomile, lemongrass, and highly potent magic-infused wild ginseng roots. He explains it is a custom-made tea kit to keep his spiritual battery fully charged during their grueling upcoming schedules, and Jerome's face lights up with pure, sparkly, idle joy. The rest of the tracker members swarm the bag, completely stunned that Siyeon went out of his way to prepare high-end wellness gifts for every single one of them. Siyeon looks at these kids and feels a deep, quiet warmth in his chest. He knows how brutally hard his younger brother Siwoo worked to debut. He realizes all of these boys must have sacrificed their entire youth and health in those dark training rooms just like Siwoo did, making him want to protect them. The manager calls out from the driver's side, letting the group know they are officially on a tight schedule and need to hit the road. The doors slide open and the boys wave frantically, promising to ditch the city and run back to the mountain the very first chance they get. Sihyun stands under his archway of red roses, waving goodbye as the black van kicks up dust and disappears down the mountain path. Inside the van, the boys are immediately digging through their gift bags, absolutely amazed by how incredibly thoughtful their friend's older brother is. Siwoo reaches into his bag and pulls out a neat, plain white envelope with his name written on the front. He unfolds the letter. Always stay healthy and well. If you ever have a hard time, you can always lean on me. Have a great world tour, little bro. Siwoo stares at the neat handwriting, his eyes softening as a quiet, emotional warmth washes over him. He rests his chin on his hand, looking out the window with a gentle, incredibly happy smile. His brother really is his ultimate anchor. The van speeds down the dusty mountain road, carrying the boys back to the flashing lights of Seoul, while Si-yeon's peaceful sanctuary grows quiet once more. A few days later, the morning sun hits the backyard greenhouse, illuminating massive, heavy clusters of rich purple grapes. Si-yeon inspects the vines, marveling at how incredibly plump, glossy, and perfectly ripe they have become under his care. He remembers that his premium imported French oak barrels are currently clearing customs at the port, which means his dream of brewing legendary high-density Druid wine is finally about to become a reality. He giggles to himself like a kid who just found the cheat codes to a game, his heart fluttering with pure excitement. He steps into the center of the field, throws his arms wide, and whispers the ancient spell, Bianaktai. A massive, shimmering wave of emerald green nature force erupts from the soil, washing over his body and completely replenishing his fragile heart's magical battery. He lets out a satisfied sigh, wipes a bead of sweat from his forehead, and decides it is time to head inside and edit his next Plant Butler vlog. Suddenly, his pocket starts vibrating with a loud, demanding buzz. He pulls out his phone and blinks in confusion as the caller ID displays Tracker Manager. He slides the screen to answer, greeting the manager warmly, while on the other end, the poor man is practically pacing back and forth with excitement. The manager unloads a massive wall of gratitude, explaining that he just had to call and thank him personally because of Jerome. He says Jerome's parents are absolutely thrilled. In the 3 years he has managed the boy, he has never seen him look this healthy, radiant, and full of life. Then, the manager laughs and says, "Honestly, Si-yeon, if I didn't know any better, I'd think you were a literal druid," making our guy's heart instantly skip a beat. Si-yeon nervously laughs it off, tells him to make sure the boys stay healthy, and quickly hangs up the phone before his cover gets blown. He leans against the wooden porch, letting out a massive sigh of relief. His magical herbal blend did exactly what it was supposed to do. Suddenly, a loud, dramatic cough echoes from the rose archway at his front gate. Grandpa Jeong and Stella, the elegant village head, stroll into the yard, Stella chuckling warmly while Jeong looks like he would rather be literally anywhere else. Si-yeon blinks in surprise, asking what brings his favorite neighbors to his hanok so early in the day. Stella points a teasing finger at the old farmer, explaining that he already ate every single leaf of Si-yeon's magic lettuce and was too embarrassed to ask for more. Grandpa Jeong's face instantly turns a bright, furious red as he shakes his fist, yelling that this old lady is making up absolute lies. But as he swings his arm, a loud, horrific cracking sound echoes from his lower back, and he freezes with a dramatic shriek. Si-yeon rushes over to support him as the old man groans, clutching his hip and admitting his back has been a complete disaster since yesterday. Si-yeon guides him carefully toward the wooden porch, promising to brew a hot cup of medicinal tea that is designed specifically for deep muscle aches. Inside, he pours the steaming, amber-colored liquid into elegant white teacups, garnishing it with a fresh slice of citrus. Stella sits gracefully, teasing the old farmer that his legendary bad temper is the real reason his body is finally falling apart. Jeong grumbles, taking a highly skeptical sip of the tea, wondering how a simple cup of warm leaf water could possibly fix decades of hard farming labor. But as the warm liquid slides down his throat, his eyes suddenly go wide with absolute shock. He leaps up from his cushion, twisting his torso left and right as a warm, soothing green current of mana completely erases every trace of his back pain. Si-yeon smiles warmly, casually explaining that he brewed the blend using special herbs he cultivates in his private greenhouse. Stella freezes, her elegant glasses flashing with a blinding white light that instantly signals her inner billionaire businessman has entered the chat. She slams her hands on the table, leaning forward with an incredibly intense expression and asking if he has ever thought about selling these herbs properly. Si-yeon blinks, completely taken aback by her sudden change in energy, asking why she is bringing up commercial business all of a sudden. Stella's expression softens as she mentions Father Mateo, reminding him of the humble priest they met during the pine mushroom thief incident. She explains the neighboring monastery is facing a massive financial crisis because they cannot source high-quality organic ingredients for their signature handmade soaps. Si-yeon hesitates, saying he only has a small personal supply, but Stella waves her hand, declaring she will personally build a professional greenhouse at the monastery. Grandpa Jeong chuckles over his cup, teasing her that for someone famous for local charity, she sure loves jumping on high-value business opportunities. Stella snaps at the old man, telling him to shut his mouth, before turning back to Si-yeon and promising she will handle all the logistics with Father Mateo. Sion is deeply moved by her generosity, but he looks her in the eye and asks how she can place so much trust in a newcomer like him. Stella smiles gently, taking a slow sip of her tea, and asks him if he wakes up at exactly 500 a.m. every single morning. She lists off his daily routine, the early morning runs up the mountain ridge, the healthy meals he cooks for himself, the meticulous hours he spends studying botany, and the way he personally checks every single leaf in his vineyard. She watches him water his garden, noting that his daily dedication to the land is printed clearly on every single corner of his beautiful hanok. She says anyone with eyes can look at this pristine house and see exactly how diligent, honest, and pure of a life he leads. Sion stares at her, a quiet, emotional wave of respect hitting his chest as he realizes how deeply she has been looking out for him. Stella laughs, adding that on top of all that, she always trusts her own seasoned, decades-long intuition when it comes to judging a person's character. Sion smiles internally, realizing her incredible business intuition has led her to entrust agricultural farming to a literal, ancient Druid master. For once, the universe has aligned perfectly, and her golden intuition is hilariously, 100% spot on. Sion looks up with a bright, confident smile, declaring that he is officially on board and ready to give this business venture a try. The next day at dawn, the mountain is quiet, and Sion is sleeping peacefully under his blankets with a warm, fluffy cat curled in his arms. Suddenly, a sharp, violent purple shockwave of pure panic shoots directly into his consciousness. He bolts upright, his eyes wide as he telepathically hears a desperate cry echoing through his spiritual network. He sprints out of his hanok and plunges into the dark, foggy forest, knowing that his bonded sentinel tree Orin has just detected a major security breach. He reaches the clearing, gasping for air as he presses his hand against Orin's massive glowing green trunk to synchronize his senses. He closes his eyes, whispering to the ancient tree, asking what kind of danger has invaded his peaceful sanctuary. The forest's raw spiritual energy floods his mind, showing him a sudden, heartbreaking vision of a nearby thicket. His eyes snap open, burning with a cold, terrifying emerald green light as a dark fury takes over his face. He whips his head toward the deep brush, running toward the source of the spiritual distress. And there, pinned beneath a brutal, heavy metal bear trap, a tiny wild rabbit is crying in sheer agony, its white fur stained with dirt and fresh blood. Sion drops to his knees, his hands trembling with rage, as he carefully pries open the metal jaws and scoops the fragile animal into his arms. He channels a massive, concentrated stream of emerald green nature force, wrapping the tiny rabbit in a warm, glowing cocoon of healing magic. The rabbit blinks, its glazed eyes suddenly clearing as its crushed bones and torn flesh knit back together in a matter of seconds. Sion places it gently on the grass, and the little guy lets out a confused squeak before hopping away into the brush, completely cured. Sion stands up, wiping the sweat from his forehead as his breath slowly stabilizes. He managed to save the rabbit, but his mind is racing. His jaw clenches, and his face goes completely cold. This is the second time someone has dared to step onto his mountain to set illegal, lethal traps. A massive, suffocating aura of green druidic anger erupts from his body, causing the local forest animals to freeze in absolute terror. He takes a slow, deep breath, forcing his magical aura to recede. He needs to calm down and approach this with the cold, calculating mind of a hunter. He drops to one knee, brushing his hand over the damp soil to analyze the footprints Orin highlighted for him. He spots a clear, heavy boot print pressed directly over the natural animal tracks, noting that the culprit selectively stepped on low grass to avoid leaving a trail. He looks out into the dark, dense woods. Navigating these steep, unlit ridges in the middle of the night is incredibly difficult, suggesting there might be multiple culprits. Furthermore, the calculated pathing and meticulously hidden tracks prove that this intruder is absolutely no ordinary clumsy amateur. Suddenly, a loud rustling sound in the nearby bushes cuts through the silence. Sion whips his head around, his voice dropping to a dangerous low growl as he demands to know who is hiding in his territory. But instead of a poacher, a very familiar pink bandana-wearing baby water deer pops her head out of the leaves with an adorable squeak. Sion's tense face instantly melts as he drops to his knees, pulling Bangwol into a warm, protective hug. He strokes her head gently, apologizing for letting his terrifying, angry aura leak out and scare her. He is just furious that someone is trying to destroy the lives he swore to protect. He stands up, telling her there might still be active traps hidden in the underbrush, and guides her carefully back down the trail as dawn breaks. A lone bird chirps in the morning sky, but the peaceful atmosphere of White Tiger Mountain has been completely shattered. Sion walks down the path, his face shadowed with a deep, anxious worry. He can feel it in his bones. An ominous, suffocating dark energy is slowly creeping up the mountain slopes, threatening the peaceful life he worked so hard to build. By noon, Sion arrives at the modern glass doors of the Good Care Animal Medical Center in town. Inside, veterinarian Lee Sumin is holding a chubby, golden-orange tabby cat named Hodu, who is purring happily and looking incredibly healthy. Sion smiles, placing a heavy black plastic trash bag onto the clinic counter. Sumin opens it, his eyes lighting up as he pulls out a massive, glowing batch of premium dried catnip and soothing chamomile tea leaves. Sumin is incredibly grateful, thanking Sion for his constant thoughtfulness and promising to buy him a proper meal to make up for it. But as they talk, Sion's eyes drift downward, his shoulders slumping as the heavy weight of the morning's events returns to his chest. Sumin's smile fades. He adjusts his glasses, leaning over the counter and asking if something terrible happened on the mountain. Sihyun hesitates, before quietly admitting that he found active, heavy-duty steel traps hidden along the upper forest trails early this morning. He explains the situation, his voice filled with a quiet, suppressed anger. Sumin leaps up from his chair, his face pale with shock as he asks if any animals or local hikers were severely hurt. Sion reassures him that he managed to heal a trapped rabbit before any major damage was done, but Sumin's expression remains incredibly dark. Sumin sinks back into his chair, sighing heavily as he recalls a local pension owner bringing in a terrified, injured puppy that had been caught in a similar trap. He says the puppy survived with minor injuries, but his voice trembles as he stares at his desk, his heart breaking for the helpless animals. Sion looks at him, asking why on earth anyone would set illegal metal traps in this peaceful modern day and age. He reasons that wild mountain game is notoriously riddled with dangerous parasites and diseases, meaning no one in their right mind is catching them for food. Sumin takes off his glasses, his eyes filled with a deep, painful sadness as he prepares to deliver the cold, ugly truth. He looks Sion dead in the eye and says there is only one logical reason left: active, intentional animal abuse. He explains there are sick, malicious people in this world who target and torture helpless animals that cannot speak, simply for their own sick amusement. He says working at this veterinary clinic has forced him to witness the horrific aftermath of these human monsters far more often than anyone should. Sumin leans over the counter, his face incredibly serious as he begs Sion to bring any injured animals straight to his clinic, promising he will do everything in his power to save them. Sion stares at him, deeply moved by this quiet veterinarian's pure golden heart. Sumin is a genuine saint walking among humans. Sihyun steps out of the clinic, reflecting on the bizarre, polarizing nature of humanity. While angels like Sumin exist, there are also sick, depraved monsters who actively seek to inflict pain on the innocent just to feel something. He stops on the busy town sidewalk, turning his head as a cold, unsettling chill runs down his spine. He realizes that no matter how ancient his wisdom as a druid is, the sheer vicious depravity of modern humans is something his imagination can never fully comprehend. A few days later, Sion stands in front of the elegant brick-red facade of Donjun Cathedral, the peaceful mountain wind rustling the trees. He walks past a beautiful, serene stone Pieta statue nestled in a lush, blooming garden of deep pink roses. The calm, holy atmosphere immediately washes over him, putting his anxious, racing heart at ease for the first time in days. Suddenly, a warm, energetic voice calls out behind him, addressing him with absolute warmth. Father Mateo steps out of the chapel doors, a large Bible cradled in his arm, and a bright, welcoming smile on his face. He welcomes Sion, suggesting they escape the sweltering midsummer heat and talk business inside the cool, quiet sanctuary. They sit in the sunlit wooden pews, the beautiful stained glass casting a holy glow as Mateo mentions Stella has told him all about Sion's incredible herbal knowledge. The handsome priest slides a neat paper list across the pew, detailing all the organic herbs the monastery desperately needs to resume their soap production. Sion reviews the list, nodding confidently as he realizes these are all standard, high-yield medicinal herbs he has successfully cultivated before. He starts explaining how they should structure the internal layout of Stella's upcoming greenhouse to maximize the soil's natural energy. Mateo lets out a massive, relieved chuckle, declaring that meeting Sion in their darkest hour of financial struggle must be a direct sign of God's perfect will. The two shake hands, their faces bright with hope as they officially cement their partnership to save the monastery. The two stay inside, lost in deep conversation until the sky outside is stained in a beautiful, warm, rosy hue. As they wrap up, Sion's face goes serious, and he decides to warn the priest about the dangerous active bear traps he discovered on the mountain trail. He explains the traps are dangerously close to the monastery's shared ridge, meaning they could easily be hidden nearby. Mateo's face goes pale with shock as he thanks Sion for the warning, promising to keep his eyes open for any suspicious strangers lurking around the chapel grounds. Suddenly, the heavy wooden doors at the back of the chapel creak open, and the sound of quiet, slow footsteps echoes through the empty hallway. Father Mateo turns toward the back, his warm, friendly smile returning as he greets the newcomer by name, Simon. Sion turns around, preparing to offer a polite, casual greeting to a local village parishioner, but as his eyes lock onto the figure standing in the doorway, his entire body instantly freezes in absolute shock. Standing in the golden twilight of the entrance, holding a small black Bible, is a tall, broad-shouldered young man wearing a dark hooded sweatshirt and a black baseball cap. Sion's mind immediately flashes back to the local market, instantly recognizing those cold, sharp eyes. It is the highly intimidating stranger rumored to be a soul gangster. Sion stares in pure disbelief as the mysterious, dangerous stranger quietly steps into the church. Why on earth is the village's most feared newcomer here attending mass under the name Simon?